I had clearly already cultivated to the Dharma aspect realm, and was prepared to be humiliated by the heroine calling off the engagement. Yet she came to discuss our marriage. Is this script flipped? Under the crooked neck tree in the backyard of the Fong family, I was lying lazily on a bamboo chair. Within my body, the spiritual energy circulated for one cycle with each breath, like a river returning to the sea. Having arrived in this world for 18 years, I was excited when I learned there were cultivators, and even more excited when I learned my family was a prominent clan dominating a city, and that I was betrothed to the daughter of another great clan, who happened to be a disciple of the world's strongest sect. This was a textbook engagement annulment protagonist template, following the formula. Once the annulment plot began, I would soar to the peak of the strongest. But the problem was this plot advancing too slowly? I was already in the Dharma aspect realm, and that fiancé still hadn't come to annul the engagement. The next breakthrough would be the saint realm, and by then, the commotion of the tribulation would be impossible to hide. Young master, Xiao Chui ran into the backyard in a hurry. Out of breath, the eldest miss of the Yi family is here with people. The patriarch wants you to go immediately. I opened my eyes abruptly, a flash of light passing through them. Finally, it's here. After waiting for over a decade for this annulment, the moment had finally arrived. I sat up slowly, straightening my robes. A calm smile appeared at the corners of my mouth. I had fantasized about this scene countless times. The eldest miss of the Yi family arriving with sect elders, aggressive and menacing. Then I would write a letter of annulment in public, leave behind a line like 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river, and walk away. Let's go to the front hall. I walked composedly. A protagonist must maintain a steady aura during important plot nodes like engagement annulments. Passing through the corridor, circling the rockery, the noise from the front hall reached my ears. Unexpectedly, there was no tense atmosphere at all. Instead, one could vaguely hear laughter. The moment I stepped into the front hall, I scanned the entire scene. At the head seat, my father Fong Zhongshan was glowing with health, laughing from ear to ear. In the guest seat was a middle-aged woman in moon-white robes, with an elegant temperament, spiritual light flowing around her. Standing beside her was a young girl, with a slender figure, in a green dress, her face as cold as frost, her brows naturally carrying an air of arrogance. Yi Ningen, I murmured the name, daughter of the Yi family, inner sect disciple of the Myriad Saints sect, rumored to have exceptional talent, already in the profound pill realm at a young age. Such a proud daughter of heaven, should naturally look down on a nobody like me, a young master of the Fong family. The plot was proceeding exactly as expected. I took a deep breath, and stepped forward to bow. The middle-aged woman looked me over, a trace of surprise flashing in her eyes. Turning to smile, Patriarch Fong, is this your son? He is truly a talent of outstanding appearance. Yi Ningen suddenly spoke, her voice as cold as a spring. Fong Zhou, long time no see, how have you been? I was slightly stunned. I'm fine, she nodded, turning to the middle-aged woman. Master, the matter of my marriage with Fong Zhou, let it be discussed between you and Uncle Fong. Wait, what did she say? Marriage? Discuss? Not an annulment? Fong Zhongshan was already smiling and speaking. Peak Master Lu, the two children have been betrothed since childhood, and now that they have both grown up, I think it is time to have this marriage settled. Peak Master Lu nodded with a smile. Patriarch Fong is right, we came this time, specifically under the order of the sect master, to discuss the specific arrangements for the wedding. Wedding. These two words struck my mind like a thunderclap. I looked at Yi Ningen, and she was looking at me. In those cold eyes, was a trace of unexplainable emotion. I stood there, as if paralyzed by an immobilization spell. No, this plot is wrong. What happened to the annulment? What happened to 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river? I even prepared the lines, and planned out the route for a comeback and slap in the face later. And you're telling me you're here to discuss a wedding? In the front hall, Father and Peak Master Lu had already preliminarily set the wedding date. The 8th day of the 3rd month. I slowly regained my senses, my heart filled with mixed emotions. I spent over a decade preparing to welcome the engagement annulment plot, only for the fiancé to come to discuss the wedding. So my efforts over the last decade were all for nothing? No, I can't say they were completely wasted. At least I cultivated to the Dharma aspect realm. But then another problem arose. I originally planned to play the pig to eat the tiger after the annulment. Now that the engagement wasn't being called off, should I hide my cultivation or not? I sat under the tree for half the day. The more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt. The cultivation I displayed to the outside world was only the spiritual aperture realm, while Yi Ningen was in the profound pill realm, an inner disciple of the Myriad Saints sect. The gap between the two was as vast as clouds and mud, and that was being generous. For her to not call off the engagement was already giving me face, but to come and propose a marriage? There was a problem. There must be something I didn't know. I stood up, and walked towards my father's study. Dad, I want to know the true reason behind this marriage. I stared directly into my father's eyes. The Yi family and the Fong family have been on good terms for generations. Dad, I interrupted him. I am currently in the spiritual aperture realm. Yi Ningen is in the profound pill realm. She is going to marry me? Are you kidding me? The study was silent for a long time. Fong Zhongshan put down the account book, looking at me with heavy eyes. After a long while, he sighed. You are quite sharp, kid. Fine. You are grown up now. This matter should no longer be kept from you. When that girl from the Yi family was born, she possessed the supreme Yin saint body. body, with cold poison seeping into her bones. Not expected to live past 16. The Yi family tried countless methods, and the conclusion was that they must use a supreme yang physique to harmonize with it. Coincidentally, your physique, called the constant yang saint body, is naturally supreme yang, immune to all evils. My heart skipped a beat. Yi Tsang explained it clearly to me. Strip the origin of your physique, and while it would make you lose the constant yang saint body, it would not cost you your life. On the day you turned 1 month old, the Yi family brought in an expert, who stripped the great sun pure yang origin from your body, and infused it entirely into Ningen. You cried heartbreakingly that day, and your mother cried heartbreakingly outside the door, but in the end, it saved Ningen's life. I looked down at my hands. So, that was what happened to me. I had lived for 18 years without ever realizing it, but thinking about it carefully, it didn't seem like a big deal. My cultivation over the years had progressed 1,000 miles a day, and I never felt like I was missing anything. So Yi Tsang set the betrothal, saying this marriage must be finalized. Your physique saved Ningen's life. The Yi family owes you, and must make Ningen repay it with her whole life. Hearing this, I stood up. I understand. I turned and walked out. Where are you going? Fang Zhongshan called out from behind. I waved my hand without looking back. To find Yi Ningen. I walked quickly, with a brisk pace. If this marriage was just for repaying a debt, then it wasn't what she truly wanted. I, Fang Zhou, do not need anyone to repay a debt with their whole life, and I do not need an unwilling wife. As for that constant yang saint body, to be honest, I really don't care about it, whether I have it or not. It doesn't affect my becoming the strongest person on this continent. This confidence has nothing to do with my physique. It is the self-assurance I have accumulated day after day for over a decade. But this matter, I must ask Yi Ningen myself. If she is unwilling, then this engagement, I will annul it. The annulment script I waited over a decade for. If it ends up with me writing the ending myself, that counts as having a beginning and an end. Of course, if she is infatuated with my handsome looks, and insists on marrying me, that's another matter. I stood outside the guest courtyard where the Yi family was staying for a moment. The gate was slightly ajar, the lamp under the eaves casting a warm yellow light. The night wind blew through the hall, bringing the rustling sound of the bamboo forest in the backyard. I knocked on the door. Come in. Yi Ningen's voice came from inside, still as cold as before, unable to discern any emotion. I pushed the door open and entered. Yi Ningen was sitting at the table, wiping a long sword. She had changed out of the green dress she wore during the day, dressed in a simple white outfit, her dark hair loosely tied behind her, lacking a bit of sharpness, but gaining some ease. The blade reflected cold light in the candlelight. Seeing that it was me, she paused slightly, then put down the sword in her hand. So late. Anything the matter? I sat down across from her, not beating around the bush. I just asked my dad. Supreme Yin Saint body, constant Yang Saint body, stripping the origin. He told me everything. Yi Ningen's expression didn't change much, but her fingers gripping the sword hilt tightened slightly. She was silent for a moment, lowering her eyes. You know. I nodded. So this marriage, it's for the Yi family to repay a debt. Yi Ningen did not deny it. She looked up, meeting my gaze calmly. A life-saving debt. It must be repaid. That's easy to handle. I spread my hands, my tone relaxed. I'll clarify it with you today. This engagement can be annulled. You and I have only spent some time together when we were young. You don't need to repay any debt with your whole life, and I don't need an unwilling wife. I'll go tell my dad tomorrow, and then go to the Yi family. No, Yi Ningen interrupted me, her voice not loud, but firm as iron. I was stunned. Why? A life-saving debt. How can it not be repaid? Yi Ningen repeated, her brows slightly furrowed, as if she were stating a heaven-ordained truth. Your physique origin was stripped, causing you to only be in the spiritual aperture realm to this day. If it hadn't been for that origin transfer, you would have had much better aptitude. This is what the Yi family owes you, and what I owe you. I opened my mouth, unsure of how to respond for a moment. I couldn't exactly say. Actually, my cultivation wasn't affected, and I've already reached the Dharma aspect realm. Moreover, Yi Ningen's tone softened slightly. The matter of the engagement has already spread throughout Tianyang City. If we annul it now, it will damage your reputation. I, Yi Ningen, act upright and open, and will not commit an act of treachery. But don't you think? I weighed my words. Marrying someone you don't like is harder to bear than breaking a promise. Yi Ningen heard this, a trace of unnaturalness flashing across her face. She looked away, picking up the long sword on the table again, her fingertips lightly stroking the spine of the sword. After a while, she said, feelings can be nurtured slowly in the future. I was completely speechless. This girl's train of thought was even more straightforward than I had imagined. I had said everything that needed to be said, and given enough of an out, but she wouldn't take the bait. Have you really thought it through? I asked, unwilling to give up. This is no small matter. It's a lifelong affair. Yi Ningen looked up at me. In those cold eyes, a hint of something like stubbornness appeared for the first time. I, Yi Ningen, keep my word. I took a deep breath, and slowly exhaled. Fine. I stood up, intending to say a few polite words before taking my leave. Anyway, I had said what needed to be said. If she felt aggrieved later, she couldn't blame me. But then I heard Yi Ningen suddenly add, "There is one more thing." My footsteps stopped. "The wedding is set for 3 months from now." Yi Ningen sheathed her sword, looking up at me. "But during these 3 months, I hope you will accompany me to the Myriad Saints sect." "What? Since you and I are future partners, you will spend much time in the Myriad Saints sect in the future, instead of waiting until after the wedding, to adapt in a flustered mess. It would be better to go take a look in advance." Yi Ningen said this, paused, and added, "I do not wish to shirk my duties as a partner, but sect matters are numerous, and I am afraid I will be unable to return to Tianyang City before the wedding date. If you go with me, it will save us the trouble of traveling back and forth." I was stunned for a long time, my brain spinning rapidly. Go to the Myriad Saints sect? That was the #1 cultivation sect in the world. Countless strange people and amazing talents. A place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. My Dharma aspect cultivation might be hidden in my own backyard, but it might not be in the Myriad Saints sect. What if I run into an elder with higher cultivation than mine? They could see through my true strength with one glance. However, beyond the Dharma aspect realm was the Saint realm. Based on the common knowledge of the cultivation world I had crammed over the years, the number of Saint realm experts known on the continent could probably be counted on 2 hands. Emperors and sovereigns were even more legendary existences. The Myriad Saints sect couldn't be so strong that just any elder was a Saint realm expert, right? As long as I was careful, it should be fine. No, why am I hiding? The play the pig to eat the tiger annulment plot could no longer be realized. Now, the invincible cultivation, sweeping through everything plot was coming on stage. And to tell the truth, I had stayed in the Fong family for 18 years, and had long wanted to go out and see the world. Joining a sect, exploring cultivation secret realms, beating up various geniuses in adverse situations. These were all scenes I had imagined countless times when idle. "Okay, when do we set off?" I asked. A flash of surprise appeared in Yi Ningen's eyes, seemingly not expecting me to agree so readily. She quickly returned to her cold expression, answering, "My master still needs to stay at the Fong family for a few days to discuss the details of the wedding ceremony with your father. We will set off in 5 days." "Fine," I responded decisively, and then turned to walk out. When I reached the door, I suddenly stopped, looking back at Yi Ningen. Under the candlelight, the young girl was looking down, placing the long sword on the table, her dark hair hanging down, covering half her face. For some reason, I suddenly felt that this young girl seemed not as difficult to get along with as I had imagined. "Yi Ningen." She looked up. I thought for a moment, and said, "I don't think you owe me anything, but if you insist on repaying me, then during my time at the Myriad Saints sect, please take care of me." After saying this, I pushed the door and stepped out, merging into the night. The door to the guest courtyard closed gently behind me. I walked under the corridor, the night wind brushing my face, blowing away the chaos of the whole day. I suddenly thought of a question. Did my words just now make Yi Ningen think that I was actually very much looking forward to this marriage? Whatever, it doesn't matter. The most important thing now is, I have to set off for the Myriad Saints sect in 5 days. I need to go back and pack what I need, and practice a bit more by the way. After all, it is the #1 sect in the world. If there's an accident, making a breakthrough in the heat of the moment might be a bit difficult. But, I will win. As for how this marriage will eventually turn out, anyway, there are still 3 months. We'll take it one step at a time. I walked on the path back to my courtyard. Occasionally a few hajime cats were walking on the road, not afraid when they saw me, approaching affectionately to ask for pets. These hajime were ones I asked my father to bring over for me. I made the request one day, and the next day a group of hajime appeared in the courtyard. It seems Fang Zhongshan felt guilty toward his son. Otherwise, he wouldn't have specifically recruited a group of people to take care of these hajime. It seems he really took it to heart. When I returned to the courtyard holding a hajime, an unexpected person appeared. Just as I stepped into the courtyard gate holding the hajime, my footsteps stopped. Moonlight was like water, pouring onto the bluestone slabs in the courtyard. Under the crooked neck tree, a moon-white figure stood quietly there, her clothes fluttering slightly in the night wind. Peak Master Lu was waiting here, without any spiritual light circulating around her body. Her aura restrained like an ordinary person, but it was this natural and perfect feeling that made the alarm bells ring in my heart. I remained calm on the surface, gently setting down the hajime I was holding. The furry little creature rubbed against my ankle, and ran away on its short legs. "Senior Lu," I bowed in greeting. "Visiting so late, may I ask what brings you here?" Peak Master Lu turned around, her face appearing exceptionally soft under the moonlight, but those eyes were like deep, calm pools, impossible to see through. She didn't rush to speak, just looking at me quietly. A moment later, she smiled slightly. "Dharma aspect realm." The 3 words fell lightly into the night wind. My pupils shrank abruptly, my internal spiritual power circulating involuntarily. I subconsciously wanted to deny it, but upon meeting Peak Master Lu's eyes, the words stuck in my throat, and I swallowed them back. After a moment of silence, I laughed helplessly. "When did you notice?" "I noticed it in the front hall during the day." Peak Master Lu's tone was flat, as if saying something insignificant. "You suppressed it very well. If it were anyone else, even other peak Dharma aspect cultivators might not have been able to see through it. It's just that the the gap between the Saint realm and the Dharma aspect realm is much larger than you imagine. I was speechless for a moment. You don't need to be nervous, Peak Master Lu said, seeing my changing expression, her tone softening a bit. I am not here to do anything to you. To reach the Dharma aspect realm at such an age, looking across the entire continent, your talent is rare to see in the world. For the Fong family to have such a Qilin child is a blessing for the Fong family. I steadied my mind, simply giving up on hiding it. Peak Master Lu, you overpraise me. It's just that I've been a bit lucky. In the path of cultivation, luck is always part of strength. Peak Master Lu shook her head. I came tonight, first to confirm my judgment with my own eyes, and second, to say a few words to you. She paused, her gaze fixed on the bamboo forest in the distant night, speaking slowly. Ningen, that child, is stubborn by nature, and fixated on her own logic. She always feels that she owes you, and that this marriage is a debt she must repay. I have tried to persuade her many times, but she won't listen. I listened silently, without interrupting. After she was saved by you that year, a few years later, she was taken into the sect. In terms of cultivation, while she may not compare to you, she is also a 1 in 10,000 genius. But in terms of human affairs, she is as simple as a sheet of white paper. I suppose that makes sense. After all, she spends her days with cultivation, not interacting with others, so this is reasonable. She says she wants to repay the debt, and she truly and honestly wants to be good to you. Peak Master Lu said this, turning to look at me, her gaze carrying a bit of seriousness. So, I am here today, as her master, to entrust you with one thing. I looked up, my muscles tensed, my palms slightly sweaty. Please treat Ningen well. Peak Master Lu's voice was not heavy, but every word felt heavy. Ningen is pure and kind by nature, treating others with sincerity, no matter why this marriage came to be, since it is to be wed. Please treat her well. The night wind blew through the courtyard, the branches and leaves of the crooked neck tree rustling. After hearing Peak Master Lu's words, my shoulders slumped slightly, and I looked at Peak Master Lu seriously. Senior Lu, rest assured, although I haven't seen Ningen for many years, we knew each other since we were young, and could be considered childhood sweethearts. The Fong and Yi families are also family friends. In terms of reason and sentiment, I will not treat her poorly. Peak Master Lu looked at me, seemingly judging the sincerity of these words. A moment later, she nodded slightly, a trace of satisfaction appearing in her eyes. With those words from you, I am relieved. She paused, the conversation suddenly turning. How much do you know about the Saint realm? I was stunned, not expecting her to suddenly ask about this. I have read some classics, knowing that beyond the Dharma aspect is the Saint realm, but the classics are vague on exactly how to break through. I answered honestly. The cultivation classics I could access in the Fong family over the years only went up to the Dharma aspect realm. Beyond that, it was a blank. Peak Master Lu nodded. As expected, beyond the Dharma aspect, it is no longer a realm that an ordinary family can reach. She pondered for a moment, speaking slowly. From body tempering to the Dharma aspect, you cultivate yourself. Spiritual energy enters the body, condensing the profound pill, nourishing the Tao infant, manifesting the Dharma aspect. Each step is constantly tempering your own body, making your physique and soul reach perfection. But the Saint realm is different. I listened with full concentration. I had been practicing on my own for all these years, and the knowledge I had was something I had fumbled through on my own. After all, my father was only in the Tao infant realm. From the Dharma aspect to the Saint realm, it is no longer cultivating oneself, but opening up the heavens and earth, using the path you have realized as a foundation, using the power of the Dharma aspect. You open up a space that belongs entirely to you in the void within your body. This space is the Saint realm. Within your Saint realm, you are the rules themselves. Enemies falling into your Saint realm are like falling into another world. Life and death resting entirely on a single thought of yours. I felt a shock in my heart. Opening up a space, being the rules themselves, opening up a space like a domain expansion. The size and strength of the Saint realm depend on two conditions. Peak Master Lu continued. First, is the depth of your understanding of your own path. The more profound the path, the more stable the foundation of the space. Second, is the accumulation of your Dharma aspect's foundation. The stronger the Dharma aspect, the greater the capacity when opening up the space. She looked at me, her eyes filled with wonder. Your cultivation foundation is extremely solid. Your Dharma aspect power far surpassing that of peers in the same realm. If I am not mistaken, you are only one step away from that threshold. My heart skipped a beat. What you lack is not accumulation, but direction. Peak Master Lu's tone became serious. From the Dharma aspect to the Saint realm, the most critical step is to clearly understand the path. You must clearly know what is the foundation of your cultivation. What is the great Tao you pursue? Only by finding this answer can you open up the world that belongs to you in the void. This step, no one can help you. Every Saint realm path is unique. Some open the heavens with the sword Tao. Some enter the Saint realm with the path of emotion. Some take the thought of protection as their foundation. Some use the intention of slaughter to open up their space. What is your path? Only you know. I was silent. What was my path? This was a question I had never seriously thought about. For 18 years, I had just blindly cultivated, leaving everything else to talent. For me, cultivation was more like breathing. I never needed needed to deliberately pursue any realm, because those realms would always come naturally. The words have been said, the rest depends on you. Peak Master Lu smiled slightly. To see through your foundation before leaving can be considered a pleasant surprise. At the very least, when arriving at the Myriad Saints sect, I don't have to worry about the person Ningen brings back suffering a loss. I snapped back to reality, and bowed respectfully to Peak Master Lu. Thank you for your guidance. Peak Master, no need to thank me. The higher your achievements in the future, the more stable Ningen's support will be. I am just preparing for a rainy day. After Peak Master Lu finished speaking, her sleeves brushed, her figure flowing like moonlight, instantly disappearing into the night. The courtyard became quiet again, the shadow of the crooked neck tree swaying on the ground. Moonlight spilled onto the bluestone slabs, like a layer of thin frost. I stood in place, looking at the direction Peak Master Lu left, not moving for a long time. Saint Realm, opening up a space, basing it on one's own path. What was my path? I looked down at my hands, suddenly remembering what Peak Master Lu said just now. Your cultivation foundation is extremely solid, your Dharma aspect power far surpassing that of peers in the same realm. If the origin hadn't been stripped that year, what realm would you be in now? But this question had no meaning. The past was the past. I never romanticized the paths I didn't take. I stood under the crooked neck tree for a long time. The Hajime from earlier had returned at some point, curling into a ball of fur at my feet, making a faint purring sound. I finally moved, bending down to pick up the Hajime, and turning to walk towards the house. I pushed the door open, placed the Hajime on the soft cushion at the end of the bed, and lay down on the bed myself, closing my eyes. Within my body, the spiritual power surged like a river, cycling one cycle after another without stop. The matter had come to this. Let's sleep first. As for breaking through, I never worried. When I need it, my Tao will come naturally. Saint Realm can be broken at any time. 5 days later, outside Tianyang City, morning light was just showing, mist lingering over the fields on both sides of the official road. A spirit boat was parked outside the city gate. Peak Master Lu had gone ahead due to sect matters. Now only I and Yi Ningen stood side by side. Yi Ningen had changed back into that green dress today, a sword at her waist, cold and calm as usual. I was traveling light, only carrying a storage ring given by my father. Let's go. Yi Ningen took me, and with a light jump, leaped onto the spirit boat, her movements clean and neat. She looked down at me, and added, the Myriad Saints sect is 30,000 miles away, requiring transit through 3 teleportation arrays. The first array is in Qingmu City, half a day's journey from here. There was no more talk along the way. Yi Ningen was not a talkative person, and I didn't know what to chat about with her either. The two of us traveled in silence like this, not feeling awkward, but rather having a strange kind of tacit understanding. Shortly after noon, the teleportation array of Qingmu City was in sight, paying spirit stones. Stepping into the array, after a whirlwind, what appeared before our eyes was another city. Repeating this 3 times, when I stepped out of the teleportation array for the 3rd time, it was the afternoon of the next day. I stood on the high platform of the teleportation array, looking out into the distance, and then I was stunned. I had imagined the appearance of the Myriad Saints sect, immortal mountains, ethereal clouds, flying waterfalls and springs. All my imaginations had revolved around the words fairy-like style, but I never expected that what truly shocked me was not the Myriad Saints sect itself, but the city outside the Myriad Saints sect. Tall buildings, high-rises lined up one after another. Those buildings were easily dozens of stories high, with the tallest exceeding 100 stories. Faint spiritual light runes flowed on the outer walls, clearly reinforced by arrays. Between the buildings, wide and clean streets crisscrossed. The street surface was paved with unknown stone slabs, exuding a warm luster in the sunlight. Shops lined the streets, the signs flashing with characters formed by spiritual light. Pedestrians came and went in a bustle, dressed differently. In the distant plaza, a huge spirit array floated in mid-air, rotating slowly, with cultivators occasionally flying in and out of the array. Further away, several rainbows spanned the sky, connecting several high towers, with cultivators walking on the rainbows, their robes fluttering, like immortals. But what surprised me the most was the sense of order in this city. Every tall building was arranged neatly, the direction of the streets was precisely planned, and the spiritual light of various spirit arrays intertwined without interfering with each other, forming a huge array network covering the entire city. This is the Myriad Saints sect? I asked. This is one of the cities on the periphery of the Myriad Saints sect, named Cheng'an. Yi Ningen walked beside me, her tone flat. Within a 50,000-mile radius of the Myriad Saints sect's mountain gate, there are over 100 such cities. Cheng'an is about 300 miles from the sect gate, the closest one. I silently digested this information. Over 100 such cities, each one built by cultivators, planned so neatly and orderly. The Fong family could be considered a strong power in a mortal city, but compared to the Cheng'an city before my eyes, it was like a firefly compared to the bright moon. I even saw the sign of a pastry shop along the street, using moonlight glazed gold valued at 1,000 spirit stones per gram. In Tianyang City, Such a thing was only used in small amounts when refining weapons, and here it was used as a shop sign. The residents of these cities are mostly those left homeless whom the sect disciples saved while out for training. Yi Ningen continued. They live peacefully in the city, making a living, and there are also a portion who are people from all over coming to seek knowledge, hoping that one day they can pass the selection and enter the Myriad Saints sect. I snapped back to reality. Nodding, he followed Yi Ningen down from the teleportation array platform, walking all the way along the main street. The shops on both sides of the street were dazzling, with pill shops, artifact pavilions, talisman workshops, as well as restaurants, teahouses, cloth shops, and grain merchants. Cultivators and mortals lived side by side, surprisingly without any sense of dissonance. Before walking for long, Yi Ningen stopped in front of a small 5-story building. We're here. The building was built entirely of bluestone, the outer walls covered in unknown vines, blooming with tiny white flowers. There was no plaque on the door, only a simple array pattern carved into the door frame. Yi Ningen took out a jade token and pressed it against the array pattern. With a flash of spiritual light, the door opened. This is the residence my master gave me after I entered the inner sect. I occasionally stay here when I return to the sect. The sect has a rule. Non-sect disciples may not stay within the mountain gate for more than 3 days. If you want to stay for a long time, you can only live here. Fang Zhou followed her into the building. The first floor was the guest hall, furnished simply but not crudely, with tables, chairs, and tea tables all provided. The second floor was the bedroom and cultivation room, while the third floor was a study. Everywhere was spotless, evidently maintained by arrays. Yi Ningen led him around to look up and down. Finally returning to the guest hall, she took a palm-sized spiritual card from her sleeve, crystal clear throughout, its surface flowing with faint spiritual light, and handed it to Fang Zhou. This is yours. Fang Zhou took the spiritual card. It felt slightly warm to the touch. On the front of the spiritual card was the emblem of the Myriad Saints sect, and on the back was a string of floating spiritual rune numbers. This spiritual card is a transaction voucher commonly used within the Myriad Saints sect, using spirit coins as the unit. Spirit coins are spiritual energy crystals refined uniformly by the sect, which can be used for trading, or absorbed directly during cultivation. One spirit coin is approximately equal to one spirit stone. I have already deposited a sum of spirit coins inside. Enough for your daily needs. Yi Ningen's tone was flat, as if she were worrying a trivial matter. Fang Zhou lowered his head and took a glance at the spiritual rune numbers on the card, his pupils shaking violently. 1 million. An average spiritual aperture realm cultivator would consume about 10 spirit stones for a day of hard cultivation. 1 million spirit coins would be enough to support a spiritual aperture realm cultivator in hard cultivation for 100,000 days, approximately 270 plus years. Even without considering this conversion method, this amount was far beyond the scope of pocket money. This, also, Yi Ningen did not wait for him to finish, but continued speaking, her brows slightly furrowed, as if she were seriously recalling something. The largest restaurant in the city is the Yunka Pavilion. The taste is acceptable, but it's a bit heavy on oil and salt, if you aren't used to it. There is also a porridge shop in the east of the city, which specializes in plain porridge and side dishes, with a lighter flavor. I am mostly in the sect on weekdays. If you need anything, you can take the spiritual card to the affairs hall in the city to send me a message. Fang Zhou's hand holding the spiritual card stiffened. How was this tone sounding more and more wrong the more he heard it? Also, Yi Ningen suddenly looked up, her gaze serious as she looked at him. Remember to eat on time. Fang Zhou was stunned. Although cultivation is important, but you are currently only in the spiritual aperture realm, and haven't reached the stage of bigu fasting. You must not neglect eating and sleeping. Yi Ningen's expression was stern when she said this. 3 meals a day are essential. I will find time to come back and see you. Fang Zhou opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but discovered that his linguistic function had completely failed at this moment. He looked down at the spiritual card in his hand, then looked up at this girl in front of him who was earnestly telling him to eat on time, suddenly feeling that this world was somewhat magical. Did you remember? Yi Ningen saw that he wasn't speaking, and tilted her head slightly. Remembered. Fang Zhou looked at Yi Ningen's earnest appearance, and replied helplessly. He wasn't a child. Was there a need to instruct him like this? Yi Ningen looked at Fang Zhou's helpless appearance, knowing that he didn't want to listen to her instructions, but continued to say, also, the rules in the city are numerous. You are a newcomer here. Do not run around randomly. If you want to go out, at least get familiar with the city's layout first. Although Cheng'an City has good public order, occasionally there are rogue cultivators making trouble. Your cultivation is still shallow. Do not provoke trouble. Fang Zhou listened to her listing them one by one, and he suddenly remembered what Peak Master Lu said that night. She said, if one wants to fulfill the duties of a partner, one will seriously do what a wife ought to do. At that time, he heard it and that was it, not taking it to heart. But at this moment, watching Yi Ningen earnestly giving instructions, he suddenly felt that Peak Master Lu's words were a bit modest. This girl wasn't just fulfilling the duties of a wife, she was treating him directly like a little kid. Was this cute or terrifying? Fang Zhou couldn't distinguish for a moment, but at least one thing he could be sure of. The days ahead would likely be much more exciting than he had imagined. After Yi Ningen finished her instructions, she left. There were still sect matters waiting for her to handle. Before leaving, she looked back at Fang Zhou one more time, her lips moving. See seemingly wanting to say something else, but in the end, she only said, "If something happens, find me," and then flew away on her sword. That green figure soon disappeared into the distant horizon. Fang Zhou stood at the door watching her leave, not retracting his gaze until that green light completely disappeared into the clouds. He lowered his head to look at the spiritual card in his hand, the glowing numbers flickering slightly in the afternoon sun. 1 million. He hadn't seen this much money combined in 2 lifetimes. Fang Zhou took a deep breath, carefully put away the spiritual card, and turned to walk into the small building. With no one around, he finally didn't have to maintain that calm and composed persona, unable to help but curse under his breath. My goodness, what is all this? Although he said this, the curve of his mouth couldn't be pressed down no matter what. Fang Zhou lived in Cheng'an City for 3 days, his life passing more comfortably than he had imagined. The small building Yi Ningen left behind was in an excellent location, quiet amidst the noise. Turning left out the door and walking half a street was the most bustling main road in Cheng'an City. Turning right and passing through a small alley was the riverfront promenade, with spiritual trees planted on both banks, evergreen throughout the seasons. Fang Zhou's daily routine was very simple. Get up in the morning, wash up, then go out to forage for food. He had visited all the restaurants Yi Ningen recommended. The food at Yunka Pavilion was indeed a bit heavy on oil and salt, but the taste wasn't bad. Thinking about it, Yi Ningen probably wasn't used to heavy flavors. The plain porridge and side dishes at the porridge shop were surprisingly good. Although plain, as a breakfast, it was still not bad. After going for 2 consecutive days, the shopkeeper already recognized him. After eating, he would stroll around the city, getting familiar with the layout of various places. The marketplace in Cheng'an City was where he spent the most time. Pills, artifacts, talismans, fragmented technique scrolls, everything was sold. Although the truly good things were mostly not placed in plain sight, just walking around opened his eyes. However, what surprised Fang Zhou the most were the residents of Cheng'an City. According to Yi Ningen, the residents of the city were mostly those left homeless whom the myriad saints sect disciples saved while out for training, and people from all over coming to seek knowledge. The former settled down in the city, making a living, treating Cheng'an City as their home. The latter mostly lived in the study quarter in the east of the city, cultivating diligently every day, hoping to pass the selection and enter the myriad saints sect. When Fang Zhou was strolling in the east of the city, he could often see 2 or 3 young cultivators, gathering together to discuss cultivation insights, or sparring and competing on the martial arts stage by the street. That vigor reminded him of when he was preparing for the college entrance exam in his previous life. This morning, Fang Zhou went to the porridge shop to eat as usual. The shop wasn't large, with only 6 or 7 tables, but it was kept clean. The shopkeeper's surname was Bai, an old man of about 50 years old, just an ordinary person, but his skill in boiling porridge was truly remarkable. Fang Zhou picked a seat by the window, ordered a bowl of white porridge, and 2 dishes of small side dishes. Just as he was eating, a commotion suddenly came from outside the shop. Fang Zhou raised his eyes to look. A group of people was walking down the street. Leading them was a young man in his 20s, wearing silk robes, wearing jade at his waist, looking quite handsome, but that overall air was out of tune with the free and easy atmosphere in Cheng'an City. He was followed by 5 or 6 people, some wearing sturdy outfits, some wearing Confucian scholars' robes. The young man stood at the door of the porridge shop, looking up at the sign, then looking down at Fang Zhou sitting in the shop. Suddenly his eyes lit up. This brother, may I share the table? Fang Zhou was still chewing the vegetables in his mouth, mumbling a The young man wasn't polite. Sitting down directly across from Fang Zhou, the group of people behind him stood at the door in a row, quite a big formation. The shopkeeper was startled, hurrying up to serve them. The man waved his hand, the same as this brother. Wait until the white porridge and side dishes were served. The man wasn't in a hurry to eat. Instead, looking at Fang Zhou with interest. My surname is Zhou. I haven't been in Cheng'an City for long. How should I address you? Brother? Fang Zhou. He was concise. Brother Fang looks unfamiliar. Are you also here for studies? Young Master Zhou asked. You could say that. Fang Zhou couldn't be bothered to explain his identity, fobbing him off casually. Young Master Zhou heard this, a trace of imperceptible light flashing in his eyes. He looked down and stirred the porridge in his bowl, smiling. Cheng'an City is truly a magical place. Tall buildings, dense spirit arrays, cultivators and mortals living in harmony. I have never seen such a city elsewhere. Brother Fang, do you know who the builder of this Cheng'an City is? The predecessors of the myriad saints sect. Probably. Fang Zhou answered casually. In the 3 days he had been strolling around the city, he had indeed heard some things. Cheng'an City began planning and construction during the reign of the 3rd sect master of the myriad saints sect. Initially, it was just a temporary camp to settle refugees, later gradually developing into what it is today. Precisely. Young Master Zhou nodded, his tone carrying undisguised longing. Within 50,000 miles of the myriad saints sect, there are over 100 such cities. Each one is orderly, prosperous, and stable. The people in the city live and work in peace and contentment. Cultivators perform their duties, spirit arrays, marketplaces, communication halls, martial arts arenas, coordinating seamlessly. This is a complete system. Fang Zhou looked up at him. This person speaks quite interestingly. Unlike typical wealthy playboys, young Master Zhou seemed to have opened a chatterbox. Continuing, I have been to many places, seen many cities, cities. Some are the capitals of mortal dynasties, magnificent, but the management is chaotic. Some are the stationing grounds of cultivator sects, rich in spiritual energy, but mortals simply cannot survive. Only the cities under the rule of the Myriad Saints sect can allow cultivators and mortals to get what they need under the same set of rules. The know-how in this is worth studying for a lifetime. Fang Zhou didn't respond, just quietly drinking his porridge. He had already vaguely sensed that this young Master Zhou wasn't a chance encounter. Sure enough, young Master Zhou changed the subject. I heard Brother Fang has quite a connection with the Myriad Saints sect. Fang Zhou's chopsticks paused. It's here. Zhou presumptuously inquired. Young Master Zhou didn't hide it either, smiling frankly. Brother Fang's fiancée is the inner sect disciple of the Myriad Saints sect, Fairy Yi Ningen. This news has already spread in the study quarter. It's just that Brother Fang has been keeping to himself these days, and probably doesn't know it yourself. Fang Zhou indeed didn't know, but this wasn't strange either. No matter how big Cheng'an City is, it's only so big. Yi Ningen brought him here personally, so someone would definitely see. So what? Fang Zhou put down his chopsticks, his expression unchanged. Young Master Zhou's body leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. Brother Fang, don't misunderstand. I, Zhou, have no malice. I just come from a remote dynasty, coming here to study, wanting to pass the assessment of the Myriad Saints sect, and become a sect disciple. But the content of the Myriad Saints sect's assessment is never leaked. I have been in the study quarter for 2 months, and don't even know what is being tested. He paused, looking at Fang Zhou with a serious gaze. If I could know the direction of the assessment in advance, it would be good to prepare early. If Brother Fang could help with this favor, in terms of remuneration. Young Master Zhou, Fang Zhou interrupted him. Since you have been in the study quarter for 2 months, you should know the rules of the Myriad Saints sect in accepting people. The specific content of the assessment changes every year, decided by sect elders on the spot. There is absolutely no fixed subject. Fang Zhou picked up his teacup and took a sip. Even if someone wanted to leak it, there would be nowhere to leak from. Young Master Zhou's expression remained unchanged, instead laughing. Brother Fang speaks of the usual situation, but the assessment for selecting sect disciples ultimately has traces to follow. For example, the form of the assessment, the standard for scoring, the preferences of the elders. These are all extremely valuable information. Fang Zhou looked at him, not speaking. Of course, I, Zhou, won't take it for free. Young Master Zhou took a brocade box from his sleeve, placed it on the table, and gently opened a crack. Rich spiritual energy surged from the crack. The cultivators in the porridge shop all raised their heads in unison, eyes filled with surprise. Inside the brocade box lay a pill, emerald green throughout, with natural pill patterns, faintly glowing with rosy light. Fang Zhou recognized at a glance that this was a spirit ascension pill. One was enough for a spiritual aperture realm cultivator to directly break through a small realm. He hadn't eaten less of this stuff at home. Young Master Zhou closed the brocade box, gently pushing it toward Fang Zhou. This is just a small gift. After the matter is completed, there will be a great reward. Fang Zhou was silent for a moment. Suddenly laughing, he stood up, took the spiritual card given by Yi Ningen from his sleeve, and shook it at the shopkeeper. Uncle buy. Check please. Then he looked down at young Master Zhou, his smile unchanged. The porridge is good. Drink it while it's hot. As for the matter of the assessment, young Master Zhou had better work harder yourself. After saying this, he turned and left the porridge shop, his pace composed. What kind of smelly fish or rotten shrimp is this? Which cultivator can't withstand such a test? Behind him, the smile on young Master Zhou's face gradually faded, his gaze fixed heavily on Fang Zhou's retreating back. The guards behind him approached silently, one of them whispering, "Your Highness, should we?" "No need." Young Master Zhou raised his hand to stop them, the corner of his mouth re-emerging with a trace of a smile. This Brother Fang is rather interesting. He retracted the brocade box into his sleeve, his expression returning to normal, picking up his chopsticks and beginning to drink the porridge slowly. Myriad Saints sect, non-sect disciples may not enter. Young Master Zhou whispered to himself, his gaze landing on the street outside the window, his voice barely audible. But he has a fiancée who is a future peak master of the Saint Cold Peak, so he cannot be considered a complete outsider, right? This time, it was just to get to know him. If it doesn't work out, that's fine too. Anyway, my goal is not here. Young Master Zhou turned to look outside the shop, as if waiting for someone. When Fang Zhou walked out of the porridge shop, the sky had already completely brightened. People were coming and going on the main street of Cheng'an City. The faint light of the spirit arrays, flowing between the buildings. Everything was as usual. He walked along the familiar route toward the small building, and when passing the entrance of the marketplace, he even glanced at today's pill market. That guy surnamed Zhou, he actually didn't take it to heart. After staying in Cheng'an City for 3 days, Fang Zhou had already roughly grasped the ecosystem here. The study quarter gathered young people from all directions, with all kinds of people from different social strata. There were rogue cultivators genuinely seeking the Tao, wealthy disciples coming to get a gilded reputation, and various forces wanting to climb the great tree that is the Myriad Saints sect. A prince of a dynasty running here to study. Sounds impressive, but in front of the Myriad Saints sect, it counts for nothing. Princes of dynasties were a dime a dozen in the study quarter. Even the crown prince of an imperial dynasty was honestly queuing up for the assessment. Who does a prince from a remote dynasty think he is? However, one thing made made Fang Zhou slightly more attentive. When young Master Zhou talked about the governance of Cheng'an City, the eagerness in his eyes didn't look faked. Ordinary people want to enter the Myriad Saints sect, either for cultivation resources, or for sect protection. This person is better. He is fixated on city governance. But that was all. Fang Zhou didn't intend to investigate further. His current life was very comfortable. A place to live, food to eat, money to spend, and a beautiful fiancée. This kind of life, he couldn't even dream of in his previous life. Now that he had finally achieved it, he just wanted to enjoy it well. Young Master Zhou sat in his original seat, that bowl of white porridge still having half left. He picked up his chopsticks, and picked up another bite of side dishes, chewing slowly, without the slightest intention of leaving. The head guard waited for a while, bowing and saying, "Your Highness, shall we return to the study quarter?" "No rush." Young Master Zhou picked up the porridge bowl, slowly taking a sip. "Wait a little longer." The head guard showed confusion. The young Master Fang just now had made his words very clear. What else could he wait for by staying? But he had followed young Master Zhou for many years, and knew well this Highness's style of conduct. He never did things without a purpose. Guests in the porridge shop changed one batch after another. The shopkeeper Uncle Bai sold 4 or 5 more bowls of porridge. Seeing that this table of guests in the corner had no intention of leaving, he didn't urge them, just silently refilling the tea twice. Don't know how much time passed. The light at the shop entrance suddenly dimmed for a moment. A green figure appeared at the door at some unknown time. Yi Ningen stood there, in sturdy attire, long hair tied behind her head. Her gaze swept around the shop, then landed on young Master Zhou. Her eyes cold as frost. She stepped inside, her pace not fast, but every step carried an invisible pressure. The guards subconsciously pressed their hands on their weapons, but young Master Zhou just raised his hand slightly, and the guards simultaneously released their hands. Fairy Yi came faster than I expected. Young Master Zhou stood up, turning to face her, bowing in greeting, his smile peaceful. Yi Ningen stopped at a place 5 steps away from him. She was half a head shorter than young Master Zhou, but when she raised her eyes to look at him, that condescending feeling seemed to be reversed. "The matter between Fang Zhou and the Myriad Saints sect is irrelevant to you. If young Master Zhou wants to take a shortcut, you have found the wrong person." Her voice was not loud, but it was like a blade sliding across an ice surface. Young Master Zhou wasn't impatient or angry, his expression frank. "Fairy Yi misunderstands. I am just a nobody. How would I dare to violate the rules set by the Myriad Saints sect?" He looked up, meeting Yi Ningen's gaze, his smile receding, his expression becoming serious. "My true intention is to ask Fairy Yi for advice on one thing." Yi Ningen didn't respond, her gaze like frost. "I come from the Beishua dynasty," young Master Zhou said. "The dynasty territory is 10,000 miles, with many cultivators, but the cities under our rule, either mortals are suffering beyond words, or cultivators are high and mighty. When I was in the royal capital, I often heard of the prestige of the 100 cities under the Myriad Saints sect, cultivators and mortals living side by side, each in their own place, for hundreds of years without major chaos. At that time, I wanted to see it with my own eyes." He paused, that eagerness re-emerging in his tone, but this time it was no longer a deliberate performance, but a seriousness that could finally be poured out after being suppressed for a long time. "Coming to Cheng'an City for 3 months, I have read all the public rules and classics in the affairs hall, and asked many deacon disciples about the spirit array layout and marketplace system in the city. From the planning at the beginning of the founding of the city by the 3rd sect master, to the law enforcement system of each city today, I have read almost all the records I could find. But there is always one question, that I simply cannot figure out no matter what." Yi Ningen finally spoke. "What question?" "Rules are dead. People are alive." Young Master Zhou looked at her. "By what right does the Myriad Saints sect make mortals not fear cultivators, and cultivators not bully mortals, for decades or 100 years without major chaos?" Yi Ningen was silent for a moment. She looked young Master Zhou over again. "You want to ask about this?" "Precisely." Young Master Zhou frankly met her gaze. "To tell the truth, my cultivation talent is not as good as my few imperial brothers, so it will likely be me who inherits the throne in the end. I will manage the dynasty's affairs, so that they can be spared from worldly affairs, and concentrate on cultivation. Now, I don't have much time left outside." He bowed solemnly to Yi Ningen. "If Fairy Yi is willing to offer some pointers, I, Zhou, swear by my Tao heart, that I will never use what I have learned against the interests of the Myriad Saints sect." The porridge shop was silent for a long time. The shopkeeper Uncle Bai stood behind the counter, the rag in his hand gripped tightly. If his dynasty also had such a figure, the people wouldn't be displaced, only to be saved here by disciples of the Myriad Saints sect in the end. Yi Ningen was silent for a moment, suddenly asking, "Do you know the difference between the Myriad Saints sect and you all?" Young Master Zhou was startled. "It's right under your feet," Yi Ningen said calmly. "There are 3 spirit veins buried under the city. The central array I is maintained by the Myriad Saints sect year-round. The spirit stones consumed each year are enough to run a small sect for 100 years. Without the support of the Myriad Saints sect, a magic array of this scale could not be set up at all." Young Master Zhou's brows furrowed slightly. slightly. Fairy Yi means, this set of methods is something others cannot learn. You can learn it. Yi Ningen looked at him. But first you must have a myriad saints sect. She paused, her gaze suddenly turning to Uncle Bai behind the counter. Moreover, the reason why Chang'an City can be like this doesn't rely only on the system and magic arrays. In Chang'an City, cultivators who break the law are punished the same as mortals. Do you know why? Young Master Zhou didn't answer. Because whether it is a cultivator or a mortal, in the eyes of the myriad saints sect, they only have one identity, that is, a human. There is no distinction of high or low, noble or cheap. Since one chooses to violate the law, then one should bear the consequences. Even I am no exception. Therefore, both mortals and cultivators believe that in Chang'an City, everyone only has an equal status. Yi Ningen retracted her gaze, looking back at young Master Zhou. Systems can be copied, magic arrays can be learned, spirit veins can be sought, but this trust requires a long period of time to grow. Even if you bring back the exact same rules and classics to the Beishua dynasty, without a sufficiently powerful force to support the rules, no one will act according to the rules at all. And without decades of unwavering justice, mortals will never truly trust cultivators, and cultivators will never truly revere the law. That is all I have to say. She turned and walked toward the door, stopping after 2 steps, turning her head to look at young Master Zhou, her voice returning to the initial coldness. If young Master Zhou is here to study, then be assessed according to the rules. If it is for something else, then it's better to go back sooner. There will not be a next time. After saying this, her figure moved, and the green figure disappeared into the morning light. The porridge shop returned to silence. The guards looked at each other, no one daring to speak first. Young Master Zhou stood in place, watching the direction Yi Ningen left, unmoving. Young Master Zhou looked down at the bowl of white porridge on the table that had completely cooled, suddenly reaching out and picking up the bowl, raising his head, and drinking the remaining porridge dry, placing the empty bowl on the table. It made a light sound. This set of methods requires a myriad saints sect. Young Master Zhou stood up, straightened his robes, and pushed the door open, walking into the bright morning light outside the shop. He walked on the wide and clean streets of Chang'an City, the guards following closely behind him, hearing their highnesses' voice being carried by the morning wind. That Beishua dynasty may not necessarily be unable to be the next one. The head guard looked at his tall and straight back, suddenly feeling that this highness who had been thinking of the people of the world since he was young, in Chang'an City, had already found the answer he wanted. And Fang Zhou, at this time, was on his way back. When Fang Zhou returned to the small building, he was carrying an oil paper bag in his hand. The pastry shop at the entrance of the marketplace had a new batch of Osmanthus poria cakes today, and he couldn't walk when he smelled it at the door. Most of the people in line were mortals. There were also several low-level cultivators wearing sect attire. This cake used spiritual materials, but it wasn't expensive. 2 spirit coins could buy a large piece. Fang Zhou bought 3 pieces, and also bought a pot of clear tea brewed with spirit spring water at a neighboring stall by the way, already calculating in his mind that after returning, he would heat the cakes, eat them with the tea, which could probably pass half an afternoon. He had been in Chang'an City for 3 days. Everything here was clearly marked with a price, and there wasn't so much pretentious probing between buying and selling. He walked on the street, mixed in the crowd, being neither abrupt nor special. This feeling was strange. Clearly, it was his first time here, but it was like he had lived here for many years. Fang Zhou pushed open the gate of the small building's courtyard, just preparing to place the oil paper bag in his hand on the table, when his actions suddenly paused. There was someone in the guest hall. Yi Ningen was sitting by the table, her back straight, like a sheathed sword. She seemed to have been waiting for a while. On the table was a cup of tea that had long since cooled. Fang Zhou's gaze stayed on her for a moment, then uncontrollably fell onto another object on the table, a palm-sized brocade bag, ink-colored throughout, embroidered with silver patterns on the surface, faintly flowing with spiritual power. Before Fang Zhou had time to speak, the beast storage bag moved slightly. Following that, a flash of spiritual light appeared at the bag's mouth. A ball of white shadow jumped out from inside, landing steadily on the table, and then sat down. That was a cat, silver white throughout, tiny spiritual light flowing between its fur, like moonlight condensed into solid form. Its tail was a section longer than an ordinary cat's, with a cluster of white fur at the tip, leaving pale silver afterimages in the air when it shook gently. Its eyes were amber, and at this moment, it was staring at Fang Zhou without blinking. Moon Shadow Cat. Yi Ningen spoke. Low-level spirit beast, gentle personality, does not need special feeding, will absorb moonlight itself. I asked someone to find it from the spirit beast peak. Fang Zhou looked at that cat, and that cat also looked at him. A moment later, it raised a front paw, slowly licked it, and then continued to stare at him, its eyes carrying a kind of condescending scrutiny. How did you? Fang Zhou didn't know what to say. When he was at the Fang family, he did raise a courtyard of Hajime, but this matter, he had never mentioned it to Yi Ningen. Mother mentioned it. Yi Ningen seemed to see through his confusion, explaining calmly. During those few days at the Fang family, I talked with mother several times. Fang Zhou suddenly understood. His mother had always liked Yi Ningen, nagging for several years back when the engagement was just set, saying that when she grew up, she would definitely be a good girl. Now that she had seen the person herself, she was probably afraid of spilling everything that should and shouldn't be said. Those cats in your home are still young, and are only mortal beasts. Leaving them them at the Fong family. Mother said she would look after them for you. You raise this moon shadow cat first. The spirit beast peak says it can sense the owner's emotions after recognizing its master. You live here alone. With it around, you won't be too bored. Fong Zhou heard the words recognize the master, Renju, subconsciously looking at that cat. The moon shadow cat was also looking at him, its tail swaying unhurriedly. How to recognize the master? Stretch out your hand. Fong Zhou stretched out his hand. The moon shadow cat lowered its head to look at his finger, as if confirming something, then raised a front paw, and pressed it gently on his fingertip. The paw pad was soft and slightly cool, the touch only lasting a moment, but Fong Zhou clearly felt a wisp of extremely faint spiritual power, flowing into his body along his fingertip, cycling through his meridians and finally forming a mark. The moon shadow cat retracted its paw, blinked at him, then jumped up, landing steadily on his shoulder. Fong Zhou's body stiffened for a moment, turning his head to look at this furry thing on his shoulder, laughing helplessly. Thanks. Yi Ningen nodded slightly, not saying much. Fong Zhou gently pulled the moon shadow cat from his shoulder into his embrace. Sitting down across from Yi Ningen, he thought about it, feeling it was better to ask some things clearly as soon as possible. Ningen, I want to ask you something. Yi Ningen raised her eyes, looking at Fong Zhou. How can one join the Myriad Saints sect? Yi Ningen was clearly startled for a moment. She looked at Fong Zhou, her brows moving slightly, as if confirming whether he was joking. After a while, she spoke, her tone carrying a bit of uncertainty. You want to join the Myriad Saints sect? Fong Zhou nodded. He had thought about this question when he promised to come to Cheng'an City with her. He wanted to enter the Myriad Saints sect, not because of the sect's many resources and rich spiritual energy, but because he wanted to advance the plot. Otherwise, life would be flat without a ripple. Too boring. Moreover, setting all this aside, he was also somewhat curious about the Myriad Saints sect itself. The world's #1 sect must have something special. But, Yi Ningen hesitated a little. You don't have a graduation certificate from a school. This time it was Fong Zhou's turn to be startled. School? He repeated, confirming he hadn't heard wrong. Accepting disciples in the Myriad Saints sect, unless they are disciples received personally by elders. Otherwise, all need to obtain a graduation certificate from a formal school. Yi Ningen's tone returned to her usual coldness. You didn't go to school when you were a child? Fong Zhou was silent. School. He, of course, knew what a school was. The Fong family itself ran a formal school. In Tianyang City, everyone with a bit of family wealth would send their children to read and cultivate. What was taught in school was not just cultivation, but also classics, history, poetry, mathematics, investigation of things, astronomy, and geography. Fong Zhongshan once asked him if he wanted to go to school. He refused without thinking. Joke. He had been secretly cultivating since he was 6, running hundreds of cycles a day. Where would he have time to go to school? More importantly, in his previous life in his original world, he had already been in school for a full 15 years, from kindergarten to university, squeezed to the point of being unable to breathe by homework, exams, and promotion, finally living a new life, and still having to go sit in a school? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Fong Zhongshan probably truly felt guilty toward him, so he let him be. In the following dozen or so years, Fong Zhou had been cultivating, reading storybooks when tired, eating delicious food, which was quite free, but calculating everything. He never calculated that joining the Myriad Saints sect actually required a school graduation certificate. Then what are the conditions for an elder to accept a disciple? Fong Zhou asked with his last hope. It depends on fate, Yi Ningen said. There are no exceptions. I was also accepted when Master passed through Tianyang City while traveling. Fong Zhou fell into silence. He looked at that moon shadow cat in his embrace, which was circling his wrist with its tail, squinting its eyes. Are there any other ways? Fong Zhou asked. Yi Ningen didn't answer. She just looked at him quietly, in those cold eyes, seemingly hiding some complex emotions. A moment later, she asked softly, why didn't you go to school back then? Fong Zhou was startled, not expecting her to suddenly ask this. He thought for a while, selecting a statement closest to the truth. Wanted to leave more time for cultivation. Yi Ningen not pursuing the questioning. She lowered her eyes, her gaze landing on that cold cup of tea on the table, not knowing what she was thinking. About entering the sect. Yi Ningen looked up. I can help you find a way. Fong Zhou looked at her, suddenly feeling something move in his heart. Okay, thank you. Outside the window, the sunlight in Cheng'an City was just right. Fong Zhou reached out and pulled the oil paper bag toward himself, tearing off a piece of cake while looking at the resentful gaze of the Hajime, and stuffed it into his mouth. Sweet. Yi Ningen got up and was about to leave, but her steps suddenly paused. She turned her head to look at Fong Zhou, her brows slightly furrowed, as if recalling some important matter. Your spiritual card. She turned around, and stretched her hand toward Fong Zhou. Let me see. Fong Zhou was somewhat suspicious, but still took the spiritual card from his sleeve and handed it over. Yi Ningen took the spiritual card, gently swiping her fingertip across the card face. As spiritual light flowed, a string of numbers appeared. She scanned it once with lowered eyes, her brows furrowing even tighter. How come you only spent this little? Her tone carried a bit of puzzlement and slight reproach. Before Fong Zhou had time to speak, she had already raised her head, looking at him earnestly. Your origin is lacking, and you are already at a disadvantage compared to others in cultivation. Usually, buy more spirit pills to assist assist in cultivation. You don't need to worry about spirit coins. After saying this, she took a pale gold spiritual card from her sleeve, gently swiping her fingertip between the two cards. On Fang Zhou's spiritual card, the spiritual rune numbers jumped, changing into 2 million. Fang Zhou opened his mouth, as if something was stuck in his throat. He looked at that number on the spiritual card that was still flickering slightly, then looked up at Yi Ningen. She was retracting that pale gold spiritual card into her sleeve, her expression flat. Not. Fang Zhou finally regained his voice. Do you know the concept of 1 million spirit coins? I know. Yi Ningen handed his spiritual card back. Disciples of the Myriad Saints sect are not short of spirit coins. If it's not enough, ask for more. Fang Zhou took the spiritual card, lowering his head to look at that bright 2 million on it, suddenly feeling that all the savings he had accumulated in these 18 years combined were probably not as much as the fraction Yi Ningen had casually swiped for him twice. When he was at the Fang family, 500 spirit stones a month was considered preferential treatment, and the purchasing power of one spirit coin was approximately one low-grade spirit stone. That is to say, his monthly allowance was about 500 spirit coins. 2 million spirit coins. He needed to save for 4,000 months, which is 333 years. You, Fang Zhou spoke with difficulty. Exactly how much money have you saved? Yi Ningen looked at him, not answering this question. She just tilted her head slightly, said, remember to buy spirit pills, and then turned and walked toward the courtyard gate. The green hem of her garment flashed at the door, and the person had already disappeared into the afternoon sunlight of Chang'an City. The guest hall was quiet for a moment. Fang Zhou lowered his head to look at the moon shadow cat in his embrace. The Hajime was also looking up at him with its head, microlight flowing in its amber vertical pupils. He was silent for a moment, flipped the spiritual card over and placed it face down on the table, then tore off a piece of osmanthus poria cake, stuffed it into his mouth. Sweet, too sweet. Early the next morning, Fang Zhou was woken up by the moon shadow cat. That ball of silver-white fur didn't know when it had crawled out from his arm's bend, and at this moment was sitting on his chest, front paws together, tail elegantly circling its own body. Looking down at him, Fang Zhou sighed, turned over, and sat up. The moon shadow cat took the opportunity to jump onto his shoulder, meowing softly in his ear. He suddenly realized, shouldn't he buy a nest for this Hajime, to save it from sleeping with him? Fang Zhou met eyes with the cat on his shoulder. Those amber eyes were watery, looking at him calmly. Fine. Fang Zhou got up to change his clothes. Let's go buy a nest for you, Hajime. The shops selling spirit beast supplies were concentrated in the spirit beast marketplace in the west of the city, across a street from the pill shops and artifact pavilions. Fang Zhou walked all the way along the main street, the moon shadow cat sitting steadily on his shoulder, its tail hanging behind him and swinging lightly, its chin slightly raised, as if reviewing its own territory. Several shops in the spirit beast marketplace had eye-catching signs hanging at their doors. The largest one was called Spirit Beast Dwelling, its storefront having 3 whole bays, the shelves fully stocked with everything from spirit beast grain to spirit beast toys. As soon as Fang Zhou entered the door, the moon shadow cat on his shoulder pricked up its ears, its gaze cast toward that row of cat nests in the corner. He followed its line of sight and walked over, discovering a huge price gap among that row of cat nests. The cheapest bamboo woven nest only cost 10 spirit coins, covered with a layer of soft grass. And that was it. The most expensive was a spirit cat nest carved entirely from moonlight wood, engraved with a gathering spirit array and a nourishing array on its surface, labeled at 8,000 spirit coins. There were also several models in between, prices ranging from a few hundred to a few thousand. Fang Zhou walked toward the middle row very naturally. The moon shadow cat on his shoulder suddenly stood up. It leaped down, landing steadily beside that moonlight wood cat nest, walking halfway around it, and then sat down. It sat quietly there, its tail resting on the edge of the nest, its posture elegant, tilted its head slightly, looking at Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou looked at the cat, then looked at the price tag, then looked the cat over from head to toe. 8,000, Fang Zhou said. The moon shadow cat didn't respond, just tilted its head slightly. Cursed Hajime. Fang Zhou took out the spiritual card, swiping 8,000 spirit coins under the shopkeeper's enthusiastic gaze. The moon shadow cat let out a joyful meow. When Fang Zhou walked out of the shop carrying the cat nest, that cat leaped back onto his shoulder nimbly. After buying the cat nest, Fang Zhou didn't go straight back. He continued to walk forward along the main street, passing the marketplace, passing the martial arts arena, and finally stopped at the far east of Chang'an City. Before his eyes was an extremely large architectural complex, with a plaque hanging above the main gate, written with the words, Chang'an School. Across the courtyard wall, he could hear the sounds of reading and the shouting of martial arts practice coming from inside. Occasionally a few teenagers and girls running out of the side door, wearing uniform plain-colored robes, holding book slips in their arms. Their steps hurried. Fang Zhou stood at the door for a moment. Hajime poked its head out from his shoulder, also looking toward the direction of the school. He reached out, hugged the cat down from his shoulder, let it lie in his arm's bend, and stepped inside. The inside of the school looked even larger than the outside. Several rows of classrooms were arranged along the central axis. After crossing the main road, there was a wide martial arts arena. Several rows of weapon racks stood by the field. A few teenagers were practicing against each other in the field. Further away were a library building and several meditation rooms. Fang Zhou stood by the side of the martial arts arena for a while, before someone noticed him. A young cultivator wearing the outer sect disciple attire of the Myriad Saints sect walked over from the direction of the classroom. His appearance was elegant, looking not much older than Fang Zhou. He sized Fang Zhou up, his gaze pausing on the moon shadow cat for a moment, then immediately bowing and saying, "This Taoist friend looks unfamiliar. Is this your first time coming to Cheng'an school?" "Yes." Fang Zhou returned a greeting. "My name is Fang Zhou. I just came to Cheng'an not long ago. I would like to ask some questions about the entrance assessment of the Myriad Saints sect." That young cultivator nodded. "My name is Cheng Wenyuan, an outer sect disciple of the Myriad Saints sect, currently teaching some basic courses for children in the school. Taoist friend wants to join the Myriad Saints sect." Fang Zhou said. "But I don't have a graduation certificate from a school." Cheng Wenyuan nodded, without showing a surprised expression, just gesturing for him to follow. The two sat down on a stone bench by the side of the martial arts arena. The moon shadow cat jumped down from Fang Zhou's arm's bend, lying on the other end of the stone bench to bask in the sun. Situations without a school certificate are actually quite common, Cheng Wenyuan said, especially for rogue cultivators and those coming from remote places. "Are you curious why the Myriad Saints sect insists on a school certificate?" Fang Zhou nodded. Cheng Wenyuan thought for a while, explaining, "Simply put, accepting disciples in the Myriad Saints sect doesn't just look at cultivation talent. Disciples of the sect who travel outside year-round represent the Myriad Saints sect in every word and deed, no matter how high the cultivation. If there is no bottom line in conduct, going out is just a disaster. A school certificate is not used to prove character. After all, character is not something a piece of paper can prove, but at least people who have received education will more or less talk reason, having read books of sages, knowing what should be done and what shouldn't be done, having a basic awareness of good and evil. Going out to do things makes one less likely to go to extremes." He paused, pointing to the teenagers who were sparring in the martial arts arena. "Like these children in Cheng'an school, most are orphans saved by sect disciples while out for training. They study and cultivate here. After graduation, some will go for sect assessment. In the future, some will become sect disciples, and some others may choose to govern other cities, or choose to be an ordinary person. No matter which path they take, the foundation laid for them by the school in these few years will influence their lives." Fang Zhou listened silently, actually agreeing in his heart. He also had similar sayings in the world of his previous life. "Then what should people without a certificate do?" he asked. "There are 3 paths." Cheng Wenyuan stretched out 3 fingers. "The first path, go to the affairs hall in the city to accept a task. The tasks are divided into 2 types, doing good or eliminating evil. A doing good task is to complete a certain length of volunteer service in the city, such as teaching in the school, helping in the medical clinic, maintaining order in the marketplace, and so on. This is recorded by people from the affairs hall. An eliminating evil task is to go out of the city to clear up rogue cultivators or demonic beasts causing trouble in the surroundings. The risk is higher, but after completing it once, one can basically get a certificate." He retracted 1 finger, leaving 2. "The second path is simpler, but also more time-consuming. You live stably in Cheng'an City for a year, without a criminal record. At that time, go directly to the affairs hall to open a good citizen certificate, and holding it, you can still participate in the sect assessment. The third path spends more time, need to re-enter the school, study courses, and graduate after passing the assessment." When Fang Zhou heard the words enrollment, his brows moved involuntarily. Cheng Wenyuan probably also saw his expression, laughing, "Feeling troublesome? Then you'd better go accept a task. If it's fast, you can settle it in a few days. It's just that the difficulty is much greater than waiting for a year." Fang Zhou lowered his head and thought. Accepting an eliminating evil task at the affairs hall was obviously more suitable for him. He was at the peak of the Dharma aspect, so cleaning up a few rogue cultivators and demonic beasts out of the city would be as easy as pie. "Many thanks for the guidance, Brother Cheng." He stood up, retrieving the moon shadow cat that was still basking in the sun into his arms. Cheng Wenyuan also stood up, waving his hand. "You are welcome. If Brother Fang takes an eliminating evil task, perhaps we could go together. I am also going to lead a team out of the city in a few days to clear out a batch of newly emerged demonic beasts. If we happen to run into each other, I hope Brother Fang will look out for us." Fang Zhou smiled, saying nothing more. He walked out of the gate of Cheng'an school holding the cat. Walking back along the road he came, the moon shadow cat climbed back onto his shoulder, squinting its eyes under the warm afternoon sun. "Next, it's time to start fishing for fish, slaughtering low-level monsters." When Fang Zhou returned to the small building, the moon shadow cat had already fallen asleep on his shoulder, its tail hanging behind him, swinging gently with his footsteps. He placed the cat nest in the corner of the bedroom, spread a layer of soft cushions, then gently lifted the ball of fur from his shoulder, and placed it into the nest. The moon shadow cat opened one eye during the movement, looked at him, and closed it again. Fang Zhou squatted by the nest for a while, confirming it wouldn't wake up anytime soon, then stood up and went out. The affairs hall of Cheng'an City was next to the square in the center of the city. When Fang Zhou walked in, there weren't many people in the hall. Several myriad saints sect disciples sat behind the counter, dealing with the documents at hand. Fang Zhou stood before the counter for a moment. A female disciple who looked about 20 years old raised her head, looking at Fang Zhou. Is the Taoist friend here to accept a task? Yes, Fang Zhou said. I need a task certificate to participate in the entrance assessment of the myriad saints sect. The female disciple nodded, pulling a booklet from under the counter, and flipping to the latest page. How should I address you, Taoist friend? And where do you currently live in Cheng'an City? Fang Zhou. I live in the 5th building on East 3rd Street. The female disciple picked up a brush to record, and asked again, which kind of task would Taoist Fang like to accept? Tasks in the affairs hall are divided into two main categories: doing good and eliminating evil. Doing good tasks mainly involve volunteer work in the city, such as teaching at the school, helping in the medical clinic, or assisting in maintaining order in the marketplace. The time requirement is at least 100 hours. Upon completion, the receiving party must sign and certify it. Eliminating evil tasks involve leaving the city to suppress demonic beasts or rogue cultivators causing trouble in the surroundings. Completing it once is sufficient. Fang Zhou thought for a while. Eliminating evil. The female disciple was not surprised by this choice. 9 out of 10 rogue cultivators who come to the affairs hall to accept tasks choose eliminating evil. 100 hours of volunteer service sounds simple, but it was still too slow for an impatient person. She flipped the booklet to the task list page, and pushed it in front of Fang Zhou. These are the tasks that haven't been claimed yet. Taoist Fang can take a look. Fang Zhou lowered his head and took a glance. The list had over a dozen tasks scattered on it, most of them being demonic beast sightings 100 miles west of the city, or suppression tasks such as rogue cultivators entrenched in abandoned mines in the southern suburbs. Behind each item, the retention time and the corresponding retention fee were noted. The lowest tier of retention fee was 50,000 spirit coins, and the longest one had been hanging for over a month, with a retention fee as high as 300,000. Retention fee? Fang Zhou looked up. Before the female disciple could speak, a middle-aged deacon walked over from the side, holding a teapot, and took over the conversation. Is it the Taoist friend's first time at the affairs hall? The middle-aged deacon looked about 40 years old, with a calm smile on his face. The pattern on his cuffs had 2 more lines than the others, so he should be at the manager level. He walked to the side of the counter, refilled his cup with tea, and then explained leisurely, this retention fee, to put it plainly, is a deposit. There was no such rule in the past. Once a task was reported, sect disciples would resolve it that same day. There was never such a thing as retention. Later, for a period of time, the number of rogue cultivators and students coming to Cheng'an City suddenly increased. People in the sect began to suggest opening some simple suppression tasks to non-sect cultivators, giving those who want to study a chance to perform. The sect discussed it for a while, and specifically set aside a category of tasks, only distributing those that would cause losses if left ignored, but would not harm people. He took a sip of tea, and continued, but the problems followed. After the tasks were set aside, some people accepted them but weren't in a hurry to perform them, dragging them out, with no movement for 10 days or half a month. But those demonic beasts and rogue cultivators wouldn't wait for you. They would ravage the crops when they should, and harass passers-by when they should. The sect had no choice, so they set this rule about the retention fee. When accepting a task, you pay a sum of money, which is fully refunded upon completion of the task. If completed within the specified time, every single spirit coin is refunded. The longer it drags on, the more is deducted. If the time limit is exceeded and it's still not finished, the retention fee goes to the affairs hall, and the task will be released to others again. When Fang Zhou heard this, he suddenly understood. This rule was clearly targeted at outside cultivators like him. Myriad Saints sect disciples don't need to pay a retention fee when executing tasks, because the sect has a natural binding force on its own disciples. Failure to complete results in punishment, and poor performance leads to accountability. But outside rogue cultivators and students have no affiliation with the sect, and there are no means of constraint, so they came up with this method. In other words, these 100,000 spirit coins are a credit deposit. If I don't trust you, you pay the money first, then do the work. Has the Taoist friend decided? The female disciple pushed the booklet forward again. Fang Zhou lowered his head and scanned the task list once more. The longest one had been retained for a month, marked as a tier 2 demonic beast, active in a certain place north of the city, with a retention fee of 300,000. The shortest one had just been posted 3 hours ago, clearing out a nest of demonic rats in the western suburbs, with a retention fee of 100,000. He pointed to that one. This one. The female disciple took a look, made a note in the booklet. Demonic rats in the western suburbs. Tier 2 demonic beast. Population size of about 10 to 20. Low risk level. The completion standard is to clear out all the demonic rats and bring back the demon core of the Rat King as proof. Time limit 3 days. Retention fee 100,000 spirit coins. Full refund upon completion. Fang Zhou took the spiritual card from his sleeve and handed it over. The female disciple took the spiritual card and swiped it on the array plate. The spiritual rune numbers jumped. She stamped the booklet and wrote a task certificate, handing it to him. Fang Zhou took the certificate, lowered his head and took a glance. It contained the task content, time limit, and completion standard. At the very bottom, there was a line of text. If not completed within the time limit, the retention fee will not be refunded. He tucked the certificate into his sleeve, and turned to walk out of the affairs hall. The afternoon sun in Chang'an City was bright and beautiful, and the spirit array in the square was still slowly rotating in midair. Fang Zhou stood on the steps, squinting his eyes as he looked at the sky. The lair of those demonic rats was in the western suburbs, not far from the city. Flying wouldn't take long. He was just about to lift his foot to leave, when hurried footsteps suddenly came from behind. Daoist Fang, please stay. That middle-aged manager ran out from the affairs hall, still holding the teapot, and lowered his voice. Daoist Fang, there is something I forgot to remind you of just now. Fang Zhou stopped in his footsteps. That nest of demonic rats in the western suburbs. When it was posted, there was a note in the remarks. The middle-aged manager's expression was a bit more serious than before. The area in the western suburbs hasn't been peaceful lately. A few days ago, a caravan was attacked in the vicinity, and 2 people were injured. Although it is not yet certain whether it is the same group of demonic rats, if you go alone, it is best to be extra cautious. Fang Zhou nodded. Thanks for the reminder. The middle-aged manager sized him up, smiled, and patted him on the shoulder. Go ahead. Remember to come back to the affairs hall to close the task. Fang Zhou responded, and walked toward the city gate along the main street. After walking 2 steps, he suddenly stopped. Looking back, the middle-aged manager was still standing in the same place, holding the teapot, looking at his retreating back, the expression on his face somewhat subtle, as if he were pondering something. Seeing Fang Zhou look back, he waved his hand, turned around cheerfully, and strolled back into the affairs hall. Fang Zhou retracted his gaze, and continued walking forward. A peak Dharma aspect cultivator suppressing a nest of tier 2 demonic rats was probably about the same as shooting a mosquito with a laser cannon. But this was also fine. The simpler the task, the faster the speed of obtaining the certificate. He just needed to be careful, and not make too much of a commotion. Fang Zhou walked out of the west gate of Chang'an City. The western suburbs were only 20 miles away. With his cultivation at the Dharma aspect realm, he could arrive in an instant. Fang Zhou took a step, and the 20-mile journey was reached in a flash. The terrain of the western suburbs was dominated by low hills, overgrown with shrubs, and covered with gravel. Fang Zhou landed on a high slope. His divine sense spread out to the surroundings like water ripples. Almost instantly, he locked onto the target. Under a hillside of scattered stones 3 miles to the west, more than a dozen faint demonic auras were gathered in one place. The demonic aura was mixed and inferior, the strongest one only reaching the level equivalent to the early stage of the spiritual aperture realm, and the rest were not even as good as the body tempering realm. In Fang Zhou's perception, that cluster of demonic aura was like a candle flame flickering in a violent wind. Even just a casual pressure from his divine sense could extinguish them completely. Immediately, his divine sense moved, pressing precisely onto those dozen demonic auras. Those demonic rats didn't even have the chance to make a sound, directly losing their breath. Fang Zhou's body flickered, and he was already above the scattered stone slope. With a flick of his thought, more than a dozen large demonic rats flew out of the rock crevices and scattered on the ground. Their fur was gray and black, their eyes scarlet. The largest one was the size of a small calf, which should be the Rat King. Only, at this moment, these demonic rats had long lost their usual fierce look, each lying prostrate on the ground, without a breath of life. Fang Zhou stretched out a finger, pointed into the air, and reached out to grab. A pigeon egg-sized grayish-brown inner core flew from the corpse of the Rat King into his palm. The surface of the inner core was rough, exuding a faint demonic power fluctuation. It was indeed the inner core of a tier 2 demonic beast without mistake. Fang Zhou put the inner core into his storage ring, rose on his sword, and returned along the way he came. When flying over the official road in the western suburbs, he took the opportunity to scan the surrounding area with his divine sense once more. The middle-aged manager said that a caravan had been attacked in this area recently. Since he was here, it was better to check it out while he was at it. His divine sense scanned within a 10-mile radius, apart from a few low-level demonic beasts that couldn't stir up any trouble, and a caravan camped in the distance on the official road. There was nothing unusual. The caravan attack should have nothing to do with this nest of demonic rats. Fang Zhou didn't stop any longer, flying straight back to Chang'an City. In the affairs hall, it was still that same female disciple sitting behind the counter. Seeing Fang Zhou come in, she raised her head, and asked, "Does Daoist Fang have any questions that are unclear?" Demonic rats in the western suburbs. Suppression complete. Fang Zhou placed the inner core on the counter, and took out the task certificate, pushing it forward. The female disciple lowered her head and looked at the inner core, then looked at the task certificate, then looked up at Fang Zhou, her mouth opening and closing. "Daoist Fang," she asked in disbelief, Are you saying that you have already completed the task of suppressing the demonic rats in the western suburbs?" "Yes, this task was handed to you, and until you came back now." She swiftly glanced at the timing array plate on the counter. The array plate flashed with spiritual light, clearly showing the interval between the task acceptance time and the current time. "Less than half an hour. I used a flying artifact to go there." Fang Zhou's tone was flat. "Can the task be settled now?" The female disciple nodded. Flying artifacts were not rare items, but a cultivator who could fly so fast using an artifact was at least at the middle stage of the spiritual aperture realm or higher. The young cultivator in front of her, who looked younger than her, actually had a higher cultivation than she expected. She didn't pursue the questioning further, picked up the inner core and carefully inspected it, confirming that it was indeed the Tier 2 Rat King's inner core without error. She made a few more notes in the booklet, then took out a certificate document stamped with the Affairs Hall's seal from under the counter, and pushed it along with the spiritual card returning the retention fee to Feng Zhou. Task certificate. Please keep it safe. The retention fee of 100,000 spirit coins has been fully refunded. Congratulations, Daoist Feng. With this certificate, you can participate in the Myriad Saints sect entrance assessment. Feng Zhou took the certificate, lowered his head and took a look. The task content was written neatly on the document, along with the completion status, and the assessment result. The bottom right corner was stamped with the vermilion seal of the Affairs Hall. Many thanks. Feng Zhou tucked the certificate into his sleeve, and turned to leave. The female disciple watched him walk out of the gate of the Affairs Hall, and muttered to herself in a low voice, "Awesome." Feng Zhou walked back along the main street, his pace light. When passing the marketplace, he bought cat food and a bag of cakes on the way, and bought a pot of spirit tea at a tea stall on the street corner. Although the moon shadow cat didn't need special feeding, Feng Zhou always wanted to prepare some snacks for it. When he returned to East 3rd Street, the sky was still quite bright. He had lived in Cheng'an City for these few days, and it was the first time he had done something constructive. With the certificate in hand, the next step was to wait for the Myriad Saints sect's assessment to begin, and then walk into the mountain gate of that number 1 sect in the world openly. Feng Zhou pushed open the courtyard gate of the small building. The vines in the courtyard were still blooming with tiny white flowers. The afternoon sun spilled onto the bluestone slabs through the flower rack. Everything exactly as it was when he went out. He carried the oil paper bag through the courtyard, and just as he stepped into the guest hall, his footsteps paused. Yi Ningen was sitting by the table. She was wearing a plain green dress today, without a sword at her waist, and her long hair was not tied up, just scattered loosely behind her shoulders. Her sitting posture remained straight, her back like a sword, but between her brows and eyes, there was less of the coldness of usual days, and more of a trace of undetectable exhaustion. Hearing footsteps, she raised her eyes to look at Feng Zhou, her gaze stopping on him for a moment. Then she tilted her head slightly. "You're back." Feng Zhou stood in place, still holding the spirit fruits and cakes he had just bought. He looked at Yi Ningen, and Yi Ningen looked at him. Those cold eyes stared at him quietly, as if confirming that he was unharmed. "Why are you here?" Feng Zhou walked in, placing the oil paper bag on the table. "Are the sect matters finished?" "No, just came back to see you." Yi Ningen stared at Feng Zhou, paused, and said, "You went to accept a task." Feng Zhou was startled. "How did you know?" "The Affairs Hall sent me a message." Feng Zhou just wanted to say something. "Tier 2 demonic rat," she said, her tone devoid of any emotion. "You went alone?" Feng Zhou opened his mouth, but before the words could come out, Yi Ningen had already spoken again. Her voice was slightly softer than just now, her brows furrowing imperceptibly. "Next time if you want to accept a task, tell me. Your practical combat experience is insufficient, and your cultivation is only in the spiritual aperture realm." Yi Ningen instructed earnestly. Although the western suburbs are not considered dangerous, going alone is ultimately not safe. "Next time, I can accompany you." Feng Zhou stood in the guest hall, speechless. He looked at Yi Ningen, suddenly wanting to confess his cultivation level to her, but fearing her unique train of thought. What if she thought his talent was average, and he wasn't worthy of her genius that was peerless in the world, and then changed to another way to repay the debt? Where would he find such a fiancé again? Better to wait until he breaks through to the saint realm before telling her. By then, even if her master makes a move, she might not be able to be taken away. "Okay." Feng Zhou sat down across from Yi Ningen, unwrapped the oil paper bag, and pushed the cakes toward her side. Yi Ningen looked at the cakes, but didn't reach for them, just picking up the cold tea on the table and taking a sip. The moon shadow cat didn't know when it had slipped out of the bedroom, leaping silently onto Feng Zhou's lap, curling into a ball of silver-white fur, its tail swaying gently, and then it closed its eyes. "If you have time, you can practice at the school. I've already told the people there." Yi Ningen put down the teacup. "I asked my master about entering the sect. She said you can just go and register when the sect assessment happens." "Not. Then why did I go to so much trouble to do the task? If you had such a connection, you should have said so earlier." "No, it seemed like I acted too fast." Feng Zhou was speechless for a moment. Yi Ningen looked at Feng Zhou's helpless appearance, the corners of her mouth curling up slightly. Afterward, she took out a jade pendant and handed it to Feng Zhou. "This is a movement technique I spent time selecting for you. Practice more in the future. If you run into someone you can't beat, you can run. She loves me so much." Feng Zhou was somewhat moved. "There are still matters in the sect that I haven't finished dealing with, so I'll be going first." Yi Ningen stood up, paused. "Next time I will bring you some spirit pills. Don't be reluctant to spend money." After saying this, seeing Feng Zhou standing there in a daze holding the jade pendant, she turned and left. "My goodness, I've never enjoyed this kind of treatment. It's got me all bewildered. Is there such a woman in the world? I haven't seen one in my previous life either." Meow. The evil Hajime woke Feng Zhou up. Feng Zhou looked at the Hajime, deciding to look at that movement technique first. Feng Zhou lowered his head to look at the warm, moist jade pendant in his hand, then looked in the direction Yi Ningen left. That green figure was long gone outside the courtyard gate, only the white flowers on the vines swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. Feng Zhou felt that his 18 years had been lived in vain, added together from his previous life and this life. No one had ever treated him with this attitude. In the script he had envisioned, happened. After the engagement was annulled, he would step onto the road of counterattack alone, slapping faces and leveling up all the way, finally reaching the peak of the world. He might have a few brothers and female confidants around him, but absolutely no one would treat him like this. This touched his blind spot. Spiritual runes spread from the jade pendant, flowing uncertainly on the surface of the pendant. Fang Zhou extended his spiritual power into it, and a complete set of cultivation technique information surged into his mind. The movement technique was called traceless. This technique was divided into 3 levels. The first level, body shifting, condensing spiritual power under the feet in a specific way, to borrow force and move horizontally, with speed so fast that it could leave afterimages in the original spot. The second level, breathing concealment, merging one's own aura with the surrounding environment, coordinating with the footwork to change orientation, making it difficult for opponents to lock on. The third level, traceless, under full performance, the figure is silent and soundless, fast to the point that it can almost not be captured by the naked eye. However, to him, the actual use of this movement technique was indeed not large. The movement technique, Human Emperor Step, he created when he broke through to the Dharma aspect realm was already enough for him to use. A thought could shrink the earth into an inch, at close quarters yet worlds apart. But Yi Ningen had clearly spent quite a bit of effort to choose this movement technique. An ordinary youth indeed couldn't resist such a high-intensity movement technique. In order to make him interested in practicing, she must have spent a lot of thought. The moon shadow cat poked its head out of the bedroom, looked at him, and then shrunk back in. Fang Zhou walked to the table and sat down, reading the technique carefully from beginning to end. Read once to get the hang of it. Stand up and practice once to reach perfection. This was his hard work and sweat. The sweat had been shed. It was time to work hard on sleeping. The next morning, Fang Zhou was woken up again by the moon shadow cat. That ball of fur didn't know when it had snuck onto his bed, lying on his chest, its tail sweeping back and forth on his chin. Fang Zhou reached out and pushed it away, turning over to sit up. The sky outside the window had only just brightened, Cheng'an City shrouded in a thin layer of morning mist. The morning bell of the school could be heard faintly in the distance. He remembered what Yi Ningen said yesterday. She had already said hello to the school side. Although he didn't need to worry about participating in the sect assessment anymore, Yi Ningen clearly felt that reading more books was also a bit of a benefit to him. So she arranged the school matter for him by the way. This was how she did things. Arranged it and then informed you. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, she won't force you. Fang Zhou didn't have any opinion on this. Anyway, he was idle in the small building, so going to the school to have a look was not bad. After settling the Hajime, it was a spirit beast after all, so it shouldn't run around. Fang Zhou went out with peace of mind. The morning of Cheng'an school was even livelier than the marketplace. When Fang Zhou walked to the gate, a group of teenagers and girls wearing plain-colored school robes were walking into the school gate in 2s and 3s. Some were holding books in their hands. Some were gnawing on breakfast bought from street stalls. Fang Zhou mixed into the crowd and walked in, finding the registration office of the school. Reported his name. The registrar flipped through the register, raised his head to look at him more, and then handed him a set of school robes and a class schedule. Cheng Wenyuan was standing at the gate of the school's main building, holding a textbook on introductory arrays. Seeing Fang Zhou come over, he went up to meet him, with a smile on his face. Brother Fang is here. Senior sister Yi told me yesterday that you hadn't attended school before, so she asked me to bring you to familiarize yourself with the curriculum here. Fang Zhou smiled, opening his mouth to express gratitude. Yi Ningen even considered his face, specially finding Cheng Wenyuan to bring him, instead of leaving him at a loss among a group of teenagers and girls 5 or 6 years younger than him. Cheng Wenyuan led him around the school. Classrooms, martial arts arena, library building, meditation rooms. Fang Zhou had already roughly seen them yesterday, but with Cheng Wenyuan's explanation today, the details were much clearer. The school's curriculum was divided into 3 categories: literary, scientific, and martial. Literary courses taught literacy and reading, historical allusions, and principles of being a person. Scientific courses taught arithmetic, investigation of things, and astronomy and geography. Martial courses taught basic martial arts moves and methods for strengthening the body. Brother Fang's cultivation foundation must be fine, Cheng Wenyuan said, looking at the schedule. Martial courses should be very simple for you. The main thing is literary and scientific courses. You didn't attend school when you were a child, so some basic things might need to be supplemented. Fang Zhou nodded resignedly. Even after coming to another world, he couldn't escape the fate of going to school. The school only had classes in the morning, and students generally chose to take 2 or 3 classes. Fang Zhou thought for a while, deciding to try them all, since he didn't need to pay tuition anyway. The first class was a literary course. Fang Zhou was arranged to sit in the last row of the classroom. The average age of the teenagers around him was no more than 13, and their cultivation level wasn't even at the body-tempering realm. He kept his expression unchanged, opened the book in front of him, lowered his head and read 2 pages, discovering it was an entry-level textbook. He silently closed the book, and began to space out. However, he soon discovered that the content of the literary course wasn't entirely what he had imagined. The old cultivator teaching the class had gray hair, speaking slowly when teaching. Do not bully the weak, do not fawn over the powerful, have something to do, and have something not to do. The old cultivator stood on the platform with his hands behind his back, his gaze sweeping over the full classroom of teenagers. teenagers. These 15 words are the admonitions left by the third sect master of the Myriad Saints sect. Many of you will become cultivators in the future. With cultivation and status, it is very easy to forget what kind of person you were originally. But disciples of the Myriad Saints sect, no matter how high their cultivation or how heavy their status, when seeing injustice, you must intervene. When seeing the weak being bullied, you must make a move. This is not some high-minded character. This is the most basic bottom line of a person. Fang Zhou leaned against the back of the chair, sitting up slightly. Cheng Wenyuan had also said similar words by the side of the martial arts arena yesterday, but the old cultivator spoke more bluntly. Some of you may not become disciples of the Myriad Saints sect in the future, and may just return to be ordinary people. This class is equally useful for you, because whether you are a cultivator or an ordinary person, first of all, you are a human being. If you are human, you must recognize words. If you don't recognize words, you won't understand the rules. You must understand basic astronomy and geography. Otherwise, you won't find the way home when you go out. You must learn arithmetic and bookkeeping. Otherwise, you'll be cheated and help others count the money. Your body must be healthy, able to run and jump, so that when others bully you, you have the strength to run. And if you can't run, you have the strength to resist. The subsequent scientific class taught basic mathematics and common sense of astronomy and geography. The middle-aged female cultivator teaching the science class drew a simple star map on the blackboard, talking from the 28 constellations to the 4 seasons and solar terms, and extending to practical techniques for identifying directions in the wild. Fang Zhou had learned more systematic astronomy in his previous life, but listening to her reinterpret astrology from the perspective of cultivation also had a unique interest. But when it came to the martial arts class, an accident occurred. A teenager didn't know why, and started screaming, "Sha, sha, sha." The teenager's low roar resounded repeatedly in the martial arts arena. The people around scattered tactfully, leaving space for this teenager. The martial arts instructor stood at the edge of the open space, with his arms crossed, looking helplessly at the teenager. Fang Zhou stood on the outer circle of the crowd, his gaze passing through the shoulders of several students in front, landing on the teenager in the center of the open space. The teenager looked no more than 12 or 13 years old. At this moment, he stood on the ground, his hands gripping tightly, his 10 fingers clenched until they were white. His head hung down low, making it impossible to see his face. He could only see his shoulders shaking violently, and blue veins bursting out. Fang Zhou frowned slightly, quietly condensing his spiritual power into his eyes. The world in his field of vision immediately changed its appearance. The spiritual array network above the martial arts arena was clearly visible, and everyone's spiritual light flickered in his eyes. His gaze landed on the teenager. The spiritual light was complete, and the meridians were smooth. Fang Zhou released his divine sense, sweeping across the teenager's soul. The soul was also complete and flawless, with no fractures, and no traces of being invaded. Fang Zhou retracted his divine sense. The body had no problems, and the soul had no problems. Then the problem could only be on the spiritual level. But it was not surprising. Cheng'an City had taken in too many pitiful people. 8 out of 10 children in the school were picked up by Myriad Saints sect disciples from various dangerous situations. Some were orphans who lost their parents in war. Some were survivors who luckily survived being chased and killed by demonic beasts. And some were simply dug out from piles of dead people. Physical wounds can be cured, but some things engraved in spirit and memory cannot be erased easily. Everyone, practice on your own. The instructor's voice echoed in everyone's ears. Leave some space for Luo Chuan. The students scattered obediently, returning to various parts of the martial arts arena in 2s and 3s, redeploying their boxing stances. A few young ones were still sneaking looks back, only to have their heads pressed and turned back by the older students beside them. Fang Zhou was a bit curious. With his cultivation level at the Dharma aspect realm, he actually couldn't understand what problem was on this teenager. Fang Zhou inquired to a teenager beside him, "Classmate, what's wrong with this person? Could it be that he has an illness that the Myriad Saints sect's physicians can't cure?" In Cheng'an City, medical treatment was mostly the responsibility of the Myriad Saints sect's physicians, and it was always treating first and charging later. Even if one didn't have money for the time being, they could owe it first, with interest so low it was almost non-existent. Basically, people living in the city didn't need to worry about illness. Ordinary difficult and complicated miscellaneous diseases were not big problems for practitioners either. The teenager who was spoken to by Fang Zhou was startled at first. Looking back and seeing that it was an unfamiliar young cultivator, he answered uncomfortably, "His name is Luo Chuan." It seems like he was attracted by a fragment scattered by some primitive god. When the fragment was seizing his body, he was saved in time by the seniors of the Myriad Saints sect, and then he had a problem mentally. Primitive god? Fang Zhou was a bit confused. He had never known that there were any so-called gods in this world. Primitive gods are creatures naturally born between heaven and earth, naturally possessing powerful strength. There are some in the dangerous creature record taught in school. The teenager looked at him like a bad student. "You don't even know this? But there aren't many primitive gods left now. Most of them have been beaten into fragments. However, once the seizing of a creature is successful, it can be resurrected after spending a little time. So, the school tells us to run when we see primitive god fragments. So gloomy, and can still play a resurrection game?" Fang Zhou was greatly shocked. The original god is indeed awesome. The teenager teenager heard Fang Zhou saying some things he didn't quite understand, and moved 2 steps aside silently. It's broken. Is he going to be another Luo Chuan? Fang Zhou didn't care either. After all, how can mortals understand the thinking of gods? Hey, classmate, Fang Zhou pursued the question. Since primitive gods are so powerful, then why were they beaten into fragments? The teenager was stumped by the question. He frowned and thought for a long while, before speaking uncertainly. The school didn't go into detail about this. Anyway, they said we should run straight if we see one. Everything else will be taught in the sect history class after we are accepted into the sect. Fang Zhou heard this and was thoughtful. This, he was familiar with. This didn't need to be learned. Teachers would talk about it in high school. The teenager's roar had gradually subsided. His body was still shaking, but his clenched fists began to loosen. Fragment seizure, resurrection, mental problem. These things strung together gave Fang Zhou a guess in his heart. Luo Chuan's soul was complete and flawless, which meant that the seizure was indeed interrupted in time. The fragment failed to truly invade the soul, but the trauma at the spiritual level remained. Perhaps the fragment left something deep in Luo Chuan's spirit before being expelled. However, this was just a guess. His knowledge of primitive god fragments was limited to those few sentences the teenager said just now. He didn't even know what the fragments looked like or what their nature was. How long has Luo Chuan's situation been going on? Fang Zhou asked again. Several months, I guess, the teenager said. The school doctor has seen him, and they also invited elders from the Myriad Saints sect to see him. All said there was no way. His soul and body are both fine, but the person just gets sick from time to time. Later, it could only be like this. When he gets sick, leave him some space, and wait for him to recover on his own. Fang Zhou nodded, and didn't ask further. In the center of the open space, Luo Chuan finally calmed down. He raised his head, revealing a sweat-soaked face. His eyes gradually gathered focus from being scattered. The instructor patted his shoulder, helped him up, handed him a pill, and told him to go to the shade of the tree to rest. Luo Chuan nodded numbly, walked to the shade of the tree and sat down, his hands still shaking slightly, but his expression had returned to calm. Alright, come over everyone. The instructor clapped his hands, recalling the students to the center of the martial arts arena. Next, practice in pairs. Remember, stop at the point. The students scattered quickly, each finding a partner. The teenager who had talked to Fang Zhou just now subconsciously moved 2 steps to the side, afraid of being assigned to the same group as this newcomer who was full of strange words. Fang Zhou wasn't in a hurry to find an opponent, standing in place and watching the teenagers in the field pairing up, and beginning to practice. Suddenly, he felt a gaze landing on himself. Under the shade of the tree, Luo Chuan was looking at him, that pair of eyes that had just gathered focus from being scattered, flashing with a scrutiny that carried inspection. That expression only lasted for less than half a breath, before Luo Chuan lowered his head again, hands clasped on his knees, returning to that numb appearance. Fang Zhou squinted slightly. Before he had time to think carefully, a palm patted on his shoulder. Brother Fang, other students' cultivation is probably not as good as yours. Why don't I accompany you to practice? Cheng Wenyuan didn't know when he had walked to his side. Fang Zhou retracted his gaze, looking at Cheng Wenyuan's middle-stage spiritual aperture cultivation, nodded. I like to challenge beyond my level. Who told me I'm a genius? Middle-stage spiritual aperture. This cultivation level was considered quite good among the outer sect disciples of the Myriad Saints sect, and was enough to look down on his peers in the younger generation of Tianyang City. Cheng Wenyuan should have learned from Yi Ningen that he was already at the peak of the spiritual aperture. However, most of the students in the school were just starting to lead energy into the body, not even at the body tempering realm. Practicing with them could only be considered guidance, with no improvement. At least that was what Cheng Wenyuan thought. Then please instruct me, Brother Cheng. Fang Zhou cupped his hands. The surrounding students automatically moved aside a larger open space. A few young ones, even excitedly ran to find a place on the spectator stand and sat down. 2 cultivators practicing together in the school was not a rare thing, but Cheng Wenyuan was an outer sect disciple of the Myriad Saints sect, usually playing the role of teaching classes in the school, rarely coming down in person. Now that he had taken the initiative to challenge a newcomer, this practice was worth watching no matter how you looked at it. The 2 stood still in the center of the open space, 10 steps apart. What is Brother Fang good at? Cheng Wenyuan asked. Fists and kicks. Stop at the point. Good. Cheng Wenyuan didn't say anything more, displaying his boxing stance, spiritual energy slowly circulating around his body. His starting stance was very standard. His base was extremely stable. His hands were one in front and one behind, both attacking and defending. The spiritual power of the middle stage spiritual aperture was not very strong, but it was circulating extremely smoothly in his body, without the slightest stagnation. Fang Zhou didn't strike any starting stance, just standing in place relaxed, his hands naturally hanging by his sides, and even tilting his head slightly, as if waiting for Cheng Wenyuan to attack first. A trace of confusion flashed in Cheng Wenyuan's eyes, but he didn't hesitate for too long. He stepped on the ground, his figure rushing forward, his right fist striking straight at Fang Zhou's chest. This fist was very fast, the fist wind breaking through the air, carrying the addition of spiritual power. Fang Zhou dodged to the side, with a small amplitude, just letting the fist front brush past his clothing. Cheng Wenyuan's fist missed, but his movements didn't pause, taking advantage of the momentum to rotate his body, his left leg sweeping toward Fang Zhou like a whip. Fang Zhou tapped the ground lightly with his his toes, his figure moving backward, letting that leg sweep past his front. Good movement technique, Cheng Wenyuan praised. But his offensive momentum didn't stop at all. He took advantage of the rotating momentum to stand firm, striking with both fists in succession, one punch after another, fast enough to leave trails of afterimages in the air. The surrounding students were dazzled. A few young ones had already opened their mouths wide. Fang Zhou walked casually in the shadow of the fists. He didn't counterattack, just dodging. Every step was taken in the gap between Cheng Wenyuan's fist momentum arriving and not arriving, with a very small amplitude. Sometimes he just tilted his shoulder, sometimes he just stepped back half a step. To outsiders, he looked like he was floating in Cheng's fist wind, clothes fluttering, yet without being hurt in the least. Brother Fang only dodges without fighting. Are you looking down on me, Cheng? Cheng Wenyuan took back his fist momentum, a bit of dissatisfaction in his tone. Brother Cheng misunderstands. I was just thinking about how to make a move without knocking you down. Fang Zhou's tone was flat. Cheng Wenyuan was stunned for a moment, then laughed involuntarily. Since Brother Fang says so, then I'm even more curious. He took a deep breath, spiritual power accelerating its circulation in his body, his momentum rising sharply. This time, he didn't plan to hold back. His footwork changed, his figure flickering to transform into 3 afterimages, attacking Fang Zhou from 3 directions simultaneously. The surrounding students exclaimed in low voices. The teenager who had talked to Fang Zhou before widened his eyes even more, murmuring, Instructor Cheng is serious. Fang Zhou watched the 3 afterimages strike simultaneously, the corners of his mouth moving slightly. Then he reached out his hand. No explosion of spiritual power, no misleading afterimages, just simply reached out his hand, his index finger and middle finger together, passing through the virtual and real intersection of the 3 afterimages, precisely pointing at the wrist of one of them. The 3 afterimages instantly dissipated. Cheng Wenyuan's figure revealed itself again. His right fist stopped in midair, his wrist being lightly resisted by Fang Zhou's 2 fingers. His entire arm actually couldn't move forward even half an inch. The martial arts arena was silent for a moment. Cheng Wenyuan looked down at his own wrist, then looked up at Fang Zhou's relaxed appearance, his expression complex. The force contained in those 2 fingers was not heavy, but the angle was extremely tricky, just happening to get stuck in the thinnest part of his fist power. What made him even more alarmed was the judgment power Fang Zhou displayed in that instant. The virtual and real changes of his move were almost impossible to be seen through at a glance within the spiritual aperture realm. But Fang Zhou not only saw through it, but also precisely found the position of his true body. You. Cheng Wenyuan took back his fist, smiling helplessly. Did Brother Fang just say, you were thinking about how to make a move without knocking me down? How is it? Was it a blow to you? Fang Zhou withdrew his hand, smiling indifferently. The surrounding students reacted, whispering like a tide spreading out. They couldn't understand the technique contained in Fang Zhou's 2 fingers, but they understood the result. Cheng Wenyuan hit a whole set of punches, but not a single attack fell on Fang Zhou. Finally, Fang Zhou only used 2 fingers to break Cheng Wenyuan's offensive. The gap in this, even ordinary people who didn't understand cultivation could see it. Cheng Wenyuan shook his wrist. Although he didn't understand what blow meant, he didn't care either. Brother Fang's strength is indeed extraordinary. Thank you for showing mercy just now. Fang Zhou returned a smile, and was about to speak, when he suddenly felt a gaze land on him. He turned his head to look at the shade of the tree by the side of the martial arts arena. Luo Chuan was sitting there, hands clasped on his knees, still in a numb appearance. But the moment Fang Zhou turned his head, he captured the scrutiny that hadn't been fully retracted in Luo Chuan's eyes, as if something was looking him over through Luo Chuan's eyes. Fang Zhou retracted his gaze, his face appearing indifferent, but in his heart, he pushed his previous guess a step further. Seizure interrupted, soul complete, but spiritual problems appeared. The school doctor, and the diagnosis given by the sect elders may not be wrong, but if I can feel there's a problem, the strong people of the Myriad Saints sect couldn't possibly not notice. What did the fragment leave deep in Luo Chuan's spirit? Under certain circumstances, it will briefly change his state. Now it might be some big shot of the Myriad Saints sect fishing. Brother Fang. Cheng Wenyuan saw him distracted and called him. It's nothing. Fang Zhou retracted his thoughts, patting the non-existent dust on his clothes. Brother Cheng's boxing style is very solid. The Myriad Saints sect disciples are indeed extraordinary. Brother Fang praises too much. Cheng Wenyuan waved his hand. Compared to Brother Fang, I'm still far behind. Seeing the practice session ending, the surrounding students gathered around, asking one thing after another. Fang Zhou dealt with them one by one. When the crowd dispersed, he looked toward the shade of the tree again, but Luo Chuan was no longer there. Fang Zhou scanned the martial arts arena, but didn't see Luo Chuan's figure. He thought for a while, and didn't pursue him. This was Cheng'an City, with people from the Myriad Saints sect everywhere in the school. If there was really a problem with Luo Chuan, it wouldn't be his, an outsider's, turn to manage it. Moreover, that look just now only made him feel something was wrong, far from needing to be vigilant. In other words, even if that primitive god came in person, he might not necessarily fear her. The martial arts class ended in the noise. The students began to clean up the equipment under the guidance of the instructor. Cheng Wenyuan made an appointment with Fang Zhou to spar another day, reminding Fang Zhou that the school was 1 day on, 2 days off, and asking him not to run in vain tomorrow. Before leaving, Fang Zhou Zhou was greatly shocked. No, if they had said schooling was so relaxing, wouldn't I have come earlier? Sure enough, the world is different. Fang Zhou had nothing to do, so he planned to find something to eat, and stroll around everywhere. The Hajime didn't know when it had found him, and at this moment was lying under the shade of a tree. Seeing Fang Zhou about to leave, it ran toward Fang Zhou quickly, leaping lightly and landing steadily on his shoulder, its tail circling his neck, letting out a lazy yawn. Let's go. Fang Zhou patted the cat's head helplessly, and walked toward the school gate. When Fang Zhou walked out of the school, it was exactly noon. Is schooling such a relaxing thing? Fang Zhou felt some emotion inexplicably. After casually finding a shop to eat and drink his fill, Fang Zhou looked at the sky. Anyway, there was nothing to do when going back, so why not go stroll around the marketplace? Actually, most of the heavenly materials and earthly treasures now didn't have any improvement for his cultivation, but in order not to live up to his fiancée's kind intentions, he still decided to go stroll around the marketplace. Although the marketplace in Cheng'an City actually didn't have too many high-level items, most of the people living in the city were mortals and low-level cultivators who came to study. Disciples of the Myriad Saints sect also rarely bought items here, so the highest level items in the marketplace wouldn't exceed tier 3 treasures usable by the profound pill realm. Fang Zhou walked between the various stalls, looking here and there, trying to find something interesting. A grey-robed rogue cultivator saw him walking over, and lowered his voice to promote a fragment unearthed from an ancient secret realm, saying it hid some peerless cultivation technique inside. Fang Zhou picked it up and weighed it, finding it to be an ordinary piece of iron. The patterns on it still carved artificially, and even carved crookedly. At most it was from last week. He put it back casually, and continued walking forward. After looking at several shops, Fang Zhou suddenly felt a bit unenthusiastic. The items in the marketplace, the best were only tier 3, equivalent to the level usable by the profound pill realm. To him, these heavenly materials and earthly treasures were simply garbage, apart from tasting a flavor, having no use at all. Finally, after looking at several shops, Fang Zhou completely lost interest. It would be better to buy some cat food for the moon shadow cat. What should a tier 1 spirit beast eat? Or maybe buy a spirit beast feeding guide? He turned around the various stalls again, and finally stopped in front of a stall selling spirit beast supplies. The stall displayed various spirit beast pills and spirit herb bags, and a few thin booklets. Fang Zhou picked up one, the cover written with Introduction to Spirit Beast Feeding. The moon shadow cat poked its head out from his shoulder, looked at that book, then turned its head away with a face full of disdain. Unbelievable. Fang Zhou didn't expect that one day he could see disdain on a cat's face. The stall owner was a round-faced middle-aged cultivator. Seeing a customer coming, his eyes lit up, opening his mouth with a laugh. Taoist friend, this moon shadow cat is raised really well. This introductory one is indeed not quite suitable for you. This moon shadow cat should be from the spirit beast peak of the Myriad Saints sect. After cultivation by the spirit beast peak, ordinary feeding methods are indeed useless to them. Fang Zhou looked at that cat on his shoulder that was gracefully licking its claws, and said to the stall owner, then how should it be raised? The moon shadow cat is enough by absorbing moonlight, and doesn't need special feeding, but occasionally, you can feed it some spirit beast pills refined from moon essence grass, which is good for its hair color. The stall owner picked up a small bag of pills from the stall and handed it over. One bag for 30 spirit coins, enough to eat for a month. Fang Zhou took the bag, and looked at it. There was no problem with these pills, at least there wouldn't be any harm in eating them, so he paid the money. The moon shadow cat crouched on his shoulder, gently rubbing against his face. Fang Zhou was just about to leave the marketplace, when a familiar voice suddenly came from behind. Brother Fang, what a coincidence. Fang Zhou turned around. Zhou Huan was standing a few steps away, still in those same silk robes, wearing jade at his waist, with no guards behind him, just him alone. In his hand, he held an old book he had just bought from a nearby book stall, the cover written with detailed rules for the management of Cheng'an City Marketplace. Looking like he was in a good mood. Young Master Zhou. Fang Zhou nodded slightly, his tone neither salty nor bland. Since their unpleasant parting at the porridge shop last time, he hadn't seen this person again. He originally thought Zhou Huan would continue to look for opportunities to pester him, but the other party had never disturbed him again. Now that they bumped into each other suddenly in the marketplace, Fang Zhou didn't have too much repulsion, just a bit surprised. Is Brother Fang here to stroll around the marketplace? Zhou Huan walked to his side very naturally, looking at the spirit beast supplies stall he had just patronized. Buying things for your spirit pet? The moon shadow cat looked at Zhou Huan, but didn't express anything, continuing to lick its claws. Fang Zhou responded, saying nothing more. If Brother Fang is not in a hurry, may we borrow a step to talk? Zhou Huan rolled up the book in his hand, pointing at the tea stall across the street. I'll treat Brother Fang to a cup of tea. Consider it an apology for the rash disturbance last time. Fang Zhou thought for a while, seeing no need to refuse, so he nodded. The tea stall was not big, and the two picked a table near the side and sat down. The stall owner served a pot of spirit tea. Zhou Huan took the initiative to pour a cup of tea for Fang Zhou, smiling. I am leaving Cheng'an City tomorrow. Fang Zhou raised his eyebrows slightly. This was indeed somewhat surprising. He remembered Zhou Huan saying last time that he had been in the study quarter for 2 months, always preparing for the entrance assessment of the Myriad Saints sect. Now that he suddenly said he was leaving, either he had given up, or his goal had already been achieved, not entering the myriad saints sect. No, Zhou Huan's tone was frank. I have already obtained the answer I wanted. He paused, looking at Fang Zhou, his smile carrying a few more points of gratitude. Speaking of which, this is thanks to brother Fang. Thanks to me? Fang Zhou was inexplicable. I didn't tell you anything. It seems Yi Ningen didn't mention this to Fang Zhou, really somewhat envious. Zhou Huan smiled, opening his mouth. Brother Fang doesn't need to mind. Just consider it a sudden realization for me. Fang Zhou picked up the teacup and took a sip. He vaguely guessed it. He himself seemed to have no value in the eyes of outsiders, the only value being the identity of Yi Ningen's fiancée. So after he left the porridge shop last time, Yi Ningen should have approached Zhou Huan. You waited for her? Fang Zhou put down the teacup, his tone calm, but spiritual power was already surging in his body. Zhou Huan didn't deny it. Brother Fang is indeed sharp. Fairy Yi came faster than I imagined. Fang Zhou didn't speak, his fingers unconsciously rubbing against the edge of the teacup. Fairy Yi is a good person. Zhou Huan played with the teacup in his hand, recalling, even to someone like me, Fairy Yi was willing to tell me the answer I wanted. It seemed it was not a bad thing. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't see Zhou Huan today, even if Yi Ningen didn't say anything. But the Myriad Saints sect was famously protective of its own. If Yi Ningen had any problems, it was estimated that the entire Beishua dynasty would suffer. Thinking of this, the spiritual power in Fang Zhou's body began to calm down. Honestly, brother Fang, Zhou Huan put down the teacup, his tone filled with emotion. Fairy Yi taught me a very precious lesson. Before I came to Cheng'an City, my whole mind was thinking about how to move the system here back to the Beishua dynasty. Spirit array layout, rules and regulations, law enforcement system, I copied everything. But Fairy Yi let me understand one thing. The reason this system can operate relies not only on the system and spirit stones, but also on the power of the Myriad Saints sect that suppresses everything. So you gave up? Fang Zhou asked. That won't happen. Zhou Huan shook his head. Although I am still far behind, but as long as I find the right direction, I can also let the people live in peace. Fang Zhou was silent for a while, then nodded. This Zhou Huan was indeed more interesting than he had imagined. Actually, Fairy Yi also told me another thing. Zhou Huan suddenly changed the subject, a glimmer of a smile increasing in his eyes when he looked at Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou raised his eyes. What? She said. If young Master Zhou is here to study, then be assessed according to the rules. If it is for something else, then it's better to go back sooner. There will not be a next time. Zhou Huan mimicked Yi Ningen's tone. Although he didn't learn it quite like her, it still had a few points of resemblance. I was scared into a cold sweat that time. Fang Zhou's fingers stopped on the edge of the teacup. Brother Fang probably doesn't know, right? Zhou Huan's smile carried a bit of teasing. When Fairy Yi came to find me, my guards beside me didn't even dare to breathe heavily. She is a personal disciple of the Peak Master of Saint Cold Peak. Usually, it is hard to even see her once. As a result, for your sake, she ran over specially to warn me in person. Fang Zhou picked up the teacup, finding that the tea had already cooled. He put the cup back, his expression not changing, but something in his heart was slowly churning. So I said, I want to thank brother Fang. Zhou Huan stood up, put that detailed rules for the management of Cheng'an City Marketplace into his sleeve, cupped his hands. If it weren't for brother Fang, I wouldn't have the opportunity to get the answer from Fairy Yi. Brother Fang has great fortune. Farewell. Zhou Huan stood up, paid for the tea, and left toward the study quarter. Fang Zhou sat by the tea stall, watching Zhou Huan's back disappear into the flow of people in the marketplace. The moon shadow cat jumped down from his shoulder, lying on the table, looking at him with amber eyes. What are you looking at? Fang Zhou reached out and gently pushed the cat's head to the side. After Zhou Huan left, Fang Zhou was still sitting in a daze at the tea stall. The tea in the cup had already cooled completely, the tea leaves settling at the bottom of the cup. The moon shadow cat lay on the table, using its tail to sweep his back of the hand one time or another, its amber eyes half open and half closed, as if accompanying him in a daze. He suddenly heaved a long sigh, stood up, picked up the cat, and walked back along the road he came. When he returned to the small building on East 3rd Street, it was still early. The afternoon sun shone in obliquely from the window, drawing a bright square on the ground of the guest hall. The moon shadow cat jumped down from his shoulder, walking into the cat nest by itself, curling itself into a ball of silver-white fur. Fang Zhou stood in the guest hall for a moment, suddenly not knowing what to do. This feeling was not strange. During the 18 years in the Fang family, he actually often fell into such a state. Cultivation came to a stage. The storybook was finished reading. Delicious food was eaten. Lying on the bamboo chair under the crooked neck tree, staring at the branches and leaves above his head in a daze, staying for a whole afternoon. When his mother passed by, she would bring him some snacks, give him some money, and ask him to go out and stroll more. His father, on the other hand, never managed him, probably feeling that he owed him, so he indulged him. Fang Zhou actually had no goals. When he came to this world, he carried the memories of his previous life, an ordinary modern person, inexplicably reborn in a world where one could practice cultivation. When he knew there were practitioners in this world, he indeed had been excited for a period of time. After discovering that the template he held was suspected to be a protagonist template of the engagement annulment style, he was even more excited. Just follow the script. Wait for annulment. Counterattack. Slap face. Live the life he had once fantasized about. When practicing cultivation, it was the same. Have talent. Can practice. So just practice, right? Anyway, it was better to be idle. But if he really had to ask his purpose of cultivation, he really couldn't answer. He didn't have any enemies. No one in the Fong family looked down on him. If he said he pursued immortality, he hadn't even thought about what to do after living for so long. He practiced cultivation, simply because the matter of cultivation was very easy for him, as natural as breathing. The realms that others had to retreat for 10 years to break through, he could break through whether lying, sitting, or walking. Spiritual energy circulated in his body smoother than a flowing river, and he never knew what a bottleneck was. Even that threshold to the saint realm that countless peak Dharma aspect cultivators couldn't cross in their whole lives, for him, was not a question of whether he could cross it, but a question of when he wanted to cross it. But it was precisely because his cultivation was too easy, so he actually didn't have any obsession with cultivation. Fang Zhou knew his character very well. He was not the kind of person who could grit his teeth and persist in adversity. If his talent was a bit worse, if he was stuck in a certain realm for 10 or 8 years, he would have given up long ago. Being his young master of the Fang family in Tianyang City, eating fragrant and drinking spicy food every day, raising a yard of hajime, and still living very happily. He didn't lack money, didn't lack love, didn't lack talent, so he had no motivation. Such days were not bad. Fang Zhou had always thought so. His father had no requirements for him. His mother only hoped he would be safe and sound, and he had no ambition that he must become the number one in the world. If the accumulation was enough, break through. If the accumulation was not enough, continue lying down. Anyway, it would be enough sooner or later. He even felt that. This mentality was perhaps exactly one of the reasons for his smooth practice. But now, he suddenly felt that this state seemed to be not enough. He could still live without any purpose. But he realized that his attitude toward others needed to change. Someone was seriously, unconditionally, being good to him, so he should also think about how to repay it. This was one of his few bottom lines. Fang Zhou leaned against the back of the chair, staring at the wood grain on the ceiling for a long time. He was a person with many problems, lazy, casual, without enterprise, but he had one bottom line. If others are good to him, he cannot pretend not to see it. This was a habit he had in his previous life, and it hadn't changed in this life. When he was in Tianyang City, his mother made him a bowl of noodles. He would accompany his mother to stroll in the street. His father gave him an extra allowance. He would also remember to buy some good tea and put it in his father's study. It wasn't any big return, but he had believed since his previous life that, if kindness cannot be passed on, then sooner or later, only hatred will remain between people. But Yi Ninggen's kindness to him, he didn't know how to repay. Although she said, it was to repay the life-saving kindness of Fang Zhou. But Fang Zhou losing the constant Yang saint body origin, was originally for Fang's father to repay the life-saving kindness of Ye's father. Between the two families, they already didn't owe each other anything. Even if Fang Zhou wanted to hate, he would hate his father. But how could Fang Zhou hate his father who had the kindness of giving birth and raising him? So all grievances should have dissipated. The engagement between the two was also just Ye's father's feeling of guilt. And although Fang Zhou and Yi Ninggen were childhood sweethearts, they had only spent a few years together when they were young. Yi Ninggen shouldn't have treated him like this. But Yi Ninggen accepted this engagement, and was really trying her best to be good to him. Fang Zhou now didn't know how to treat Yi Ninggen. Fang Zhou was somewhat bewildered. Meow. The moon shadow cat jumped onto the table, gently rubbing its head against Fang Zhou's hand. Fang Zhou lowered his head to look at it, and it tilted its head up, its amber eyes appearing particularly clear. Fang Zhou spread his palm out, and the moon shadow cat rested its chin in his palm. An peerless good cat. Hajime, you can really sense my emotions. Fang Zhou suddenly realized clearly. Instead of worrying here, it would be better to also treat her with sincerity. He just didn't believe that a Dharma aspect expert couldn't find a way to repay a profound pill ant. Fang Zhou gently lifted the moon shadow cat from the table and placed it back into the cat nest, then sat cross-legged on the bed, closed his eyes. Spiritual power surged in his body like a river. The spiritual power of the peak Dharma aspect vast like the sea, making a low buzzing sound as it circulated in his meridians. His Dharma aspect stood quietly in his dantian, a giant phantom similar to his face, flowing with pale golden luster all over its body, eyes closed, hands forming seals, surrounded by 10,000 spiritual runes, each spiritual rune representing his perception of a certain law. Talent is too good, which is also a kind of annoyance. Inadvertently, I have understood so many laws. Maybe I could challenge beyond my level to the saint realm now, but it's more satisfying to challenge beyond my level to the spiritual aperture realm, giving others a chance to prove they are a genius. I am really a very good person. As thoughts flowed, another spiritual rune was added. Before Fang Zhou knew how to break through to the saint realm, he had actually reached the basic requirements for breaking through to the saint realm. But at that time, Fang Zhou didn't know how to break through to the saint realm, so he chose to constantly improve his perception of laws to improve his combat power. After all, in his previous life, he could also be considered a strength partisan. Then, inadvertently, Fang Zhou comprehended a big pile of messy laws. Now, Fang Zhou didn't break through to the saint realm, just because he subconsciously wanted to use these laws to comprehend the Tao that belonged to himself. Fang Zhou heaved a sigh, opened his eyes. Cultivation cultivation is too tiring. Let's look at what's for dinner. Saint Cold Peak, snow-watching platform. Peak Master Lu sat on the stone stool, looking at the disciple who had been standing in front of her for almost a stick of incense. Finally couldn't help but open her mouth. You said, you want to return the origin of the constant yang saint body to Fangzhou. How to return it? Yi Ningen stood there, her back straight as a sword. The mountain wind blew over, the broken hair on her forehead being brushed up and then falling down. The disciple has checked the relevant classics. The reward for winning first place in the grand competition last year was also used by me to exchange for the answer. Using the dual cultivation method as an introduction, the origin that was infused into the disciple's body back then can be restripped and returned to Fangzhou. Peak Master Lu raised her eyes, looking at this disciple of hers, and didn't speak for a long while. Dual cultivation method? Peak Master Lu suddenly felt that she didn't seem to understand this disciple very well. Do you know what you are saying? I know. Then do you know what the dual cultivation technique means? Yi Ningen's expression didn't change. If Fangzhou is willing, the disciple will cultivate this method with him after marriage. The method itself is beneficial to both sides. Stripping the origin will only make the disciple temporarily weak for a period of time, without damaging the foundation. The wind suddenly became a bit stronger, and the accumulated thin snow was rolled up, drifting toward the two of them, but fell to the ground 3 feet outside the snow-watching platform. Ningen. Peak Master Lu's tone was deeper than before. Teacher asks you one thing. Why do you do this? What is it for? Yi Ningen didn't answer immediately. She wasn't good at saying these things, having been like this from childhood to adulthood. But the person standing in front of her was her teacher, the person closest to her in this world besides her parents. When the disciple first saw Fangzhou, I was only 4 years old. Yi Ningen's voice was calm, like telling a very distant thing. At that time, his constant yang saint body was already on me. He treated me like a younger sister, telling me some strange stories, teasing me to play. If I cried, he would also try every way to coax me. Peak Master Lu didn't speak, just listening quietly. Later, after growing up a bit, I learned about the engagement, knew that his origin was in my body, and also knew how difficult his cultivation had been all these years. Yi Ningen paused. I didn't dare to see him again. Every time my father mentioned Fangzhou, he would be silent for a long time. My mother told me that Fangzhou is the benefactor of our Yi family, is my life-saving benefactor. Later, I went to practice under your sect. The year I broke through to profound pill, I went home once, and my father asked me what ideas I had about the engagement. I could only say I didn't know. Yi Ningen raised her eyes, meeting Peak Master Lu's gaze. But my father said, the Yi family owes the Fang family, and I also owe Fangzhou. The wind stopped. Then what about yourself? Peak Master Lu asked. What do you think? I don't know. Yi Ningen's voice was very light. The disciple doesn't know what to do, but the disciple believes that returning the origin to him is something the disciple should have done a long time ago. Peak Master Lu looked at this stubborn disciple in front of her, suddenly feeling a bit helpless, and also a bit heartbroken. Have you mentioned this to Fangzhou? No. Why? Yi Ningen lowered her eyes. The disciple doesn't know how to open her mouth. He doesn't seem to care about these things. There was finally a slight ripple in her voice. The constant yang saint body is gone, yet he still cultivated to the spiritual aperture peak. I originally thought he would hate me, or ask me to return the constant yang saint body to him, but he didn't ask for anything. Yi Ningen's voice went low. He was even willing to marry me. Peak Master Lu didn't speak. She knew what Yi Ningen meant by willing. In Yi Ningen's view, this engagement was her father's wishful thinking from beginning to end. Who would be willing to marry an enemy who had snatched his own origin? Fangzhou had enough reason to refuse, but he didn't. So you feel sorry for him? Peak Master Lu was a bit helpless. Yi Ningen didn't speak, her fingers slowly tightening in her sleeves, the fingertips sinking into her palms, the nails pressing shallow marks on the skin. You child, always like this from childhood. Peak Master Lu's tone softened much. Love to drill into a dead end. Yi Ningen was still standing, unmoved. But you also have to think clearly. Peak Master Lu looked at her eyes. You return the origin to him. What about yourself? It won't affect cultivation. Yi Ningen answered very quickly. The supreme Yin saint body doesn't exist by relying on the origin of the constant yang saint body. Back then, it was just used to dissolve the cold poison. Now the disciple's foundation is stable. Stripping the origin will only make the disciple temporarily weak for a period of time, without damaging the foundation. Peak Master Lu looked at her, slowly sighed a breath. Ningen, the supreme Yin saint body will not produce cold poison. Yi Ningen was startled slightly. When you were born, there was an omen from heaven, attracting a shred of fragment of the primitive god of wind and snow. That fragment is the root of the cold poison, always attached deep in your origin. For these years, it wasn't just dissolving the cold poison back then. Even now, it is still the origin of the constant yang saint body that is helping you suppress that fragment. Yi Ningen's eyelashes trembled a bit. So teacher didn't let you do this thing now? Not because I'm reluctant to part with that origin. Peak Master Lu looked at her. But because you will be in danger of losing your life if you strip it before breaking through to the Tao infant. The snow-watching platform was silent. Only the water sound coming vaguely from the mountain stream in the distance remaining. Yi Ningen stood there, the expression on her face not having much change. Teacher. Yi Ningen's voice was very light. As long as teacher is willing to help the disciple with one thing. Peak Master Lu looked at her, suddenly having a somewhat bad premonition. You say, teacher just said, that the fragment of wind and snow know is attached deep in the disciple's origin. Yi Ninggen's gaze carried a hint of craftiness. Can teacher help the disciple remove it? Peak Master Lu was startled for a moment. She looked at Yi Ningen, looked for a long while, and then suddenly laughed. That smile full of helplessness. No moves left. You child. She shook her head. You know what teacher is worrying about, so you pick the places where teacher is most worried about to attack. Isn't that right? Yi Ningen didn't speak, just pursing her lips slightly. Peak Master Lu stood up, walked in front of Yi Ningen, removing that fragment. It is indeed not difficult for me. I didn't help you remove it before, just because it had benefits for you. Yi Ningen's eyes brightened slightly. However, Peak Master Lu raised a finger. There are two conditions. Teacher, please speak. First, after removing the fragment, you must come to me once every month. Let me look at your situation. Don't think about hiding it from me. Whatever changes in your body, you can't hide it from my eyes. The disciple understands. Second, Peak Master Lu looked at her, her tone sinking again. About this matter, you must tell Fang Zhou first. Yi Ningen's expression finally had a trace of movement. Teacher, you just said you didn't know how to open your mouth. Peak Master Lu interrupted her. But this matter is not yours alone. That origin is his thing. If you want to return it, you have to let him know. Peak Master Lu reached out, gently gathering her broken hair blown by the wind behind her ears. If you really want to marry, this kind of thing should not be hidden from him at all. Think clearly. Yi Ningen lowered her eyes, not answering immediately. The wind on the snow-watching platform rose again, distant peaks undulating, accumulated snow reflecting cold white light under the sunlight. After a long time, Yi Ningen nodded gently. The disciple knows. Peak Master Lu looked at her appearance, sighed a breath, reached out and patted her head. The force not heavy not light. Knows. Then hurry back. Stood for a stick of incense. Legs not sour. Yi Ningen bowed, turned and walked toward the foot of the mountain. After walking a few steps, she stopped, looked back once. Teacher. Many thanks, teacher. Peak Master Lu waved her hand. Didn't answer. Peak Master Lu stood on the snow-watching platform, watching her back getting smaller bit by bit, finally disappearing at the end of the winding mountain road. Then she gazed at the distant sea of clouds, and muttered to herself as if talking to herself. Damn it, I want to see which untalented old thing needs dual cultivation to strip an origin. Idle and having nothing to do, making this damaging trick. Fang Zhou took the moon shadow cat out, and it was already dark. Fang Zhou walked around the street twice, finally choosing a noodle shop he hadn't eaten at before. The noodle shop was very small, a cloth curtain hanging at the door. There were only 4 tables in the shop, 3 of which were empty. 2 people were sitting at the one against the wall. A young man, wearing a suit of gray sturdy attire, carrying a long sword on his back, should be a sword cultivator. Opposite the man sat a little girl, looking like 6 or 7 years old. The little girl was wearing a cotton cloth dress that didn't quite fit her, sitting very decently, both hands placed on her knees, her face facing the tabletop. Fang Zhou noticed her eyes. Those eyes were open, the pupil gray-white, without any focus. Fang Zhou retracted his gaze, sat down at the table closest to the door, and ordered a bowl of plain noodles. Brother Su, the noodles smell so fragrant. The young sword cultivator pulled 2 pairs of chopsticks from the chopstick tube, and handed her one. Wait a moment. It's hot. Fang Zhou raised his eyes and looked at him again. Profound pill realm. Sword aura restrained. Cultivation is quite good at this age. The noodles were served. Fang Zhou lowered his head to eat noodles, not deliberately listening anymore. But the shop was only this big, and he could hear even if he didn't want to. Brother Su, are you taking Xiaolu to see her eyes tomorrow? Yes. After seeing the eyes, can Xiaolu see what Brother Su looks like? Yes. Then is Brother Su good looking? The sword cultivator paused for a moment. It's alright. The little girl giggled, then asked again after finishing laughing. What if it can't be cured? Fang Zhou's chopstick stopped for a moment. In his previous life, he couldn't bear to see children like this. It will not be uncurable. If there is an accident, I will take you to the Saint Medicine Peak. The sword cultivator said. The Myriad Saints sect had always supported disciples in doing good deeds. Fang Zhou sucked the noodles into his mouth, his movements lighter than before, and the sound of chopsticks hitting the bowl also became smaller. Fang Zhou put down the chopsticks, stood up and walked toward that table, looking down at the little girl. The little girl seemed to feel something, turning her face in his direction. Those gray-white eyes had nothing, but her lips moved slightly. Is someone there? Yes. Fang Zhou squatted down, facing her at the same level. Your eyes, I can cure. As a peak Dharma aspect expert, curing an ordinary person's eye disease was still something he could do easily. The sword cultivator raised his head, his gaze sweeping over Fang Zhou, carrying scrutiny, but his hand didn't go to touch the sword. Fang Zhou met his gaze, without avoiding, and without releasing any momentum. The two of them looked at each other like this for a second. The sword cultivator spoke first. Does the Taoist friend know medical skills? No. Fang Zhou raised his hand, a spiritual power with rich vitality circulating in his hand. I have other ways. Not yet asked. Fang Zhou stood up, looking at the sword cultivator. Where is this child from? The sword cultivator felt the vitality of the spiritual power flowing in Fang Zhou's hand, was silent for a moment, looking down at the little girl. Met outside the city. Her parents brought her to seek medical treatment, but encountered demonic beasts. His voice was very low. When I arrived, only she was left. The sound of boiling noodles in the shop suddenly seemed very loud. The sword cultivator's hand was placed on the table. table, not looking at Fang Zhou when speaking. This child is congenitally blind. The village couldn't cure it. Her parents wanted to send her to Cheng'an City for treatment. They walked for more than half a month, and would have arrived in a few more days. Fang Zhou lowered his head. The little girl didn't understand these words very well, but she still understood the words, Mom and Dad. She pursed her lips, hands tightly gripping the sword cultivator's sleeve. She didn't cry, nor did she speak, just turning her face toward the sword cultivator's direction. Those gray-white eyes had nothing, but her lips were pursed into a line. The sword cultivator looked down at her, didn't say any comforting words, just gently holding her hand. Fang Zhou was still half squatting on the ground, that ball of vitality carrying life force still flowing in his hand. Light greenish light reflecting on the little girl's face. She seemed to feel something, tilted her head slightly. Xiaolu. The sword cultivator called her name, his voice very light. Xiaolu said, This Taoist friend says he can cure your eyes. Xiaolu turned her face toward Fang Zhou's direction, those gray-white eyes opening wide. Really? Really? Fang Zhou said. But Mom and Dad said, curing eyes costs a lot of money. Xiaolu's voice was very light. The noodle shop suddenly became quiet. The noodle boiling master stopped the movements in his hand, and steam rose from the big pot, blurring the wall behind the stove. The sword cultivator's hand on the table slowly clenched, joints rough, knuckles distinct, a wound on the back of his hand not yet completely healed. Fang Zhou looked at Xiaolu's face, and opened his mouth in a very normal tone. Your parents already paid the money before leaving, telling you to treat your eyes well. Then when will they come back? After your eyes are cured, and you grow up, they will be back. Xiaolu lowered her head, her hand still gripping the sword cultivator's sleeve, gripping it very tightly. Then she let go with one hand, and wiped her face messily. After wiping, she rubbed it on her lapel again. Then I will grow up quickly. The sword cultivator looked at Fang Zhou, his lips moving, but he didn't speak. Fang Zhou raised his hand, the pale green spiritual power at his fingertips drifting gently, like a fallen leaf, slowly landing on Xiaolu's eyes. That ball of spiritual power seeped into Xiaolu's eye sockets. Her eyelashes trembled gently, and then, deep within those gray-white pupils, something was melting. The gray-white color began to recede from the center, little by little, replaced by a clear, bright black. Xiaolu blinked her eyes. Light was reflected in her pupils for the first time. The dim candlelight in the noodle shop, the steam rising from the stove, the bowl of unfinished noodles on the table. Her gaze went from blurred to clear, from light to shadow, finally landing on the person squatting on the ground in front of her. Fang Zhou was retracting his hand, his expression calm. Can you see me? Fang Zhou smiled. Xiaolu stared at him for 2 seconds, not used to it having just regained her vision. You are so dark. The expression on Fang Zhou's face stiffened for a moment. The sword cultivator couldn't help it, letting out a laugh. After laughing, he coughed and turned his face to the side. Xiaolu turned toward the sword cultivator again, staring at him for a long while. Her eyes were wide and bright, as if she were trying to piece together the person in front of her and the brother Su she had heard about countless times. Brother Su? She called out. You look very good looking. Xiaolu looked at him earnestly, then looked at Fang Zhou earnestly, and added a sentence for Fang Zhou. You are also very good looking. Not dark anymore. The moon shadow cat jumped onto Fang Zhou's shoulder, and meowed softly in his ear. The sword cultivator pushed the bowl in front of Xiaolu toward her, putting the chopsticks back into her hand. Xiaolu looked down at the chopsticks, then looked up at the sword cultivator, and lowered her head to start eating noodles. She couldn't stop after the first bite, her cheeks stuffed round. The sword cultivator turned his head, his gaze crossing the aisle between the 2 tables, landing on Fang Zhou. How should I address you? Taoist friend? Fang Zhou. Su Yan. The sword cultivator reported his own name, then looked at the cat on Fang Zhou's shoulder. Myriad Saints sect disciple? Not yet. Fang Zhou said. Fiancee is from Saint Cold Peak? Su Yan took another look at him, that gaze carrying the surprise of seeing a legendary figure. Many thanks, Brother Fang, for helping. Su Yan suppressed his thoughts. By the way, the sect has a perfect resettlement system in Cheng'an City. For cases like Xiaolu's, they will be sent to the charity house in the east of the city. If Brother Fang has time, you can go see Xiaolu more often. Is that so? It's the sect's will. Disciples just need to do good deeds. Everything follow-up is borne by the sect. If special treatment is needed, the sect will also cure them first before sending them to the city for resettlement. That's quite good. The Myriad Saints sect is truly not an ordinary sect. Su Yan turned his head to look at Xiaolu. She was lowering her head drinking soup, holding the bowl with both hands, the heat steaming her face rosy. Xiaolu finished the last sip of soup, and burped with satisfaction. She raised her head, looking at Su Yan, then looking at Fang Zhou, her gaze stopping on the moon shadow cat on Fang Zhou's shoulder. Cat, cat. She put down the bowl, slid off the chair, ran to Fang Zhou and stood still. She didn't reach out to grab it, just stood in front of Fang Zhou, looking up. The moon shadow cat looked down at her, then jumped off Fang Zhou's shoulder gracefully, landing steadily in Xiaolu's arms. Xiaolu hugged it full, burying her face in the cat's fur, letting out a sigh of satisfaction. Fang Zhou settled his own noodle bill, and also paid for the 2 bowls of noodles for Su Yan and Xiaolu. After all, he is a sword cultivator. Still better to save him some money. Many thanks, Brother Fang. Then I will send her to the charity house. Su Yan stood up, bowed to Fang Zhou. He walked to the door, finding Xiaolu still hugging the cat and not not letting go. Xiaolu, let's go. The moon shadow cat raised its head from her arms, looked at Feng Zhou. Feng Zhou nodded slightly. The moon shadow cat then lowered its head again, licking Xiaolu's fingers. Xiaolu giggled twice, buried her face in the cat's fur and took a deep breath, then returned the cat to Feng Zhou's hands. She looked up at Feng Zhou, then looked at the cat. Can I hug the cat again in the future? Yes, Feng Zhou said. Xiaolu nodded happily, walked to Su Yan's side, and habitually took his hand. Su Yan nodded at Feng Zhou, pushed open the cloth curtain, and the two figures, one big and one small, merged into the night color on the street. Across the curtain, one could still hear Xiaolu's voice. Brother Su, that cat felt like a ball of moonlight when hugged. Is moonlight actually soft? Probably. Early the next morning, Feng Zhou was shaken awake by a deep bell sound. The bell sound came from the direction of the city square, ringing 3 times in a row, each sound heavy and hurried. The moon shadow cat sprang up from its little nest, its spine arched, exploding into a ball of silver-white fur, hissing toward the window. Feng Zhou turned over and sat up, reaching out to scoop the cat into his arms to soothe it. The moon shadow cat curled up in the crook of his arm, its claws grabbing his sleeve through the cloth. Feng Zhou put on his outer robe, and pushed open the window. The morning light had just spread over the city wall, and there were already hurried footsteps on the street. Feng Zhou held the cat, and walked out of the courtyard gate. A few young cultivators in myriad saint sect disciple attire were maintaining order at the street corner, explaining something in low voices to the residents gathered by the roadside. A disciple saw Feng Zhou come out, and walked quickly to the courtyard gate. This Taoist friend. Yesterday, someone was harmed by demonic beasts near Cheng'an City. Today, the sect has dispatched disciples to carry out suppression on the demonic beasts in the surroundings. The city is temporarily under martial law. Taoist friend, if you have nothing to do, please do not move around randomly. Feng Zhou nodded, and retreated into the courtyard. He closed the door, standing in the middle of the courtyard, holding the shivering moon shadow cat in his arms, suddenly feeling a bit unreal. Yesterday, Su Yan just sent Xiaolu to the charity house, and the next day, the myriad saint sect's bell rang throughout the city, directly declaring martial law, dispatching disciples, and launching a comprehensive suppression. Feng Zhou returned to the room, placed the moon shadow cat back into the cat nest, and squatted beside it, stroking the fur on its back on and off. With such a sect around, he seemed to be able to just find a place and rot be lazy. Is there any super invincible thunderous big villain coming out for me to beat? Feng Zhou felt somewhat helpless. The moon shadow cat gradually calmed down, shrinking back into the nest and curling into a ball. Feng Zhou stood up, and a thought suddenly popped into his mind. Hey, if the city is under martial law, what will he eat this morning? He stood on the spot, seriously weighing the two options of going out to forage or starving at home, and was just about to take the risk of being questioned by the law enforcement team to go out, when the courtyard gate was suddenly knocked. Feng Zhou was about to go open the door, but before he could reach the gate, the door was pushed open. Yi Ningen walked in, carrying an oil paper bag in her right hand. She was wearing the blue and white tone St. Cold Peak disciple uniform today, snow peak patterns embroidered on the hem, her long hair tied neatly. Feng Zhou was somewhat stunned looking at her appearance. I brought you breakfast. Yi Ningen placed the oil paper bag on the table. Feng Zhou stood by the table, looking at the oil paper bag, hesitated for a while, then reached out to open it. Inside the oil paper bag were a few steaming buns. He picked one up and took a bite. The bun's skin was soft just right, and the soup inside the filling was extremely delicious. Thanks, he said vaguely. Yi Ningen sat down opposite him, her gaze falling on the tabletop, not looking at him. Feng Zhou slowed down the speed of chewing, sweeping her with his peripheral vision. Yi Ningen's lips were slightly pursed, as if thinking about something very difficult to say. When Feng Zhou stuffed the second bun into his mouth, Yi Ningen suddenly raised her eyes, her gaze meeting his. Yesterday, a myriad saint sect disciple reported that demonic beasts killed people. Yi Ningen spoke, her voice lower than usual. Today, the sect dispatched disciples to clear out the surrounding demonic beasts, and the affairs hall in the city will also release related tasks. If you want to go, I will take you. It's safer. No need to go to the affairs hall to accept tasks. Feng Zhou still had half a bun in his mouth, his cheeks bulging. He looked at Yi Ningen, and Yi Ningen looked at him. Her eyes were very serious, yet carried a kind of cautious feeling. Feng Zhou suddenly panicked in his heart, hurriedly swallowing the bun, averting his gaze, hurriedly changing the subject. Why such a big reaction this time? Normally, isn't it just looking for the demonic beast that killed people? The sect believes that the number of demonic beasts is too large, and daily tasks can no longer suppress their reproduction and growth, so they decided to carry out a large-scale suppression. Yi Ningen answered, her voice returning to her usual coldness. Then why martial law in the city? Isn't the suppression of demonic beasts outside the city? Martial law is to prevent evil cults from mixing into the rogue cultivators in the city, taking the opportunity to make trouble. Yi Ningen's tone suddenly drifted a bit. Do you want to go with me? Go. Anyway, being idle at home is also being idle. Feng Zhou agreed immediately. Just treat it as a spring outing, mainly because I want to watch Yi Ningen, to prevent any accidents from happening to her. Yi Ningen nodded, stood up, and walked outward. Feng Zhou tied his outer robe tightly. The moon shadow cat jumped onto the table. He patted its head head, telling it not to run around, and then followed Yi Ningen. The two exited the courtyard gate one after the other. Seeing Yi Ningen, the young disciples patrolling the street, successively bowed and gave way. Yi Ningen nodded to each one in response. Fang Zhou followed half a step behind her, watching her neatly tied long hair swaying gently in the morning light. Quite a few myriad Saints sect disciples had already gathered outside the north gate of the city, standing in groups of 3 or 5 on the open space by the official road. When Yi Ningen walked over, a few disciples took the initiative to welcome them. The leading male disciple had a tall build, carrying a wide sword on his back, red fire patterns embroidered on his cuffs. "Senior Sister Yi, you are here." He took a look at Fang Zhou. "Who is this?" "Fang Zhou. He is in our team." The male disciple took another look at Fang Zhou, his gaze stopping on him for a moment, nodded, and didn't ask further. "The scope of this suppression is 100 miles around Cheng'an City. Our team is responsible for the west, with the main targets being Tier 2 to Tier 3 demonic beasts. Anything above Tier 4 will be handled by the Dao Infant Realm senior brothers and sisters, divided into 4 groups, 3 people per group, supporting each other." Yi Ningen nodded, turning to Fang Zhou. "Follow me closely." Fang Zhou followed her into the forest by the side of the official road. The morning light sprinkled down through the tree canopy, spreading a layer of broken gold on the ground. The air was mixed with the smell of soil and dew. The male disciple followed behind them, his eyes scanning back and forth between them, the corners of his mouth curling up, silent. The group walked for 30 miles, when a black shadow suddenly darted out from the bushes in front. A demonic wolf the size of a calf lunged out of the bushes, its whole body fur pitch black like ink, its eyes scarlet, drool dripping from its mouth, pouncing directly at Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou had long noticed this Tier 3 demonic wolf. With a crooked smile, he waved his hand casually, and a red light shone directly toward the demonic wolf. The body of the demonic wolf was crushed instantly. A sword light flashed by, and the demonic wolf that had already been crushed into a pancake was cut in two by the sword light. Fang Zhou turned his head to look at Yi Ningen. At this moment, Yi Ningen was holding a sharp sword. At the moment the demonic wolf appeared, she had already swung her sword, only a step slower than Fang Zhou. Yi Ningen had been paying attention to Fang Zhou. Even if Fang Zhou did nothing, that demonic wolf couldn't get within 3 feet of Fang Zhou. Yi Ningen looked at Fang Zhou, a bit surprised by his combat power. "Your combat power is very strong, but your realm is not high. Better save some spiritual power. Get closer to me." Yi Ningen slowly retracted her sword into its sheath, silently walking closer to Fang Zhou, her voice carrying a trace of undetectable guilt. Although Fang Zhou hadn't had enough fun yet, but hearing Yi Ningen say this, he still complied and nodded, quietly approaching Yi Ningen. The male disciple looked at the two of them, suddenly wanting to go home. Yi Ningen led the team forward for 70 miles, encountering over a dozen waves of demonic beasts. "The quantity is wrong." Yi Ningen retracted her sword into the sheath. She raised her head and swept a glance at the surrounding dense forest, her brows furrowing slightly. "Usually, after walking 200 miles, we wouldn't encounter so many demonic beasts." The male disciple rested the wide sword on the ground, and gasped for breath. Could it be because of the large scope of this suppression, and the demonic beasts were driven over from elsewhere? That wouldn't cause so many demonic beasts to be driven over. Yi Ningen retracted her divine sense. "There are at least 13 more groups within my divine sense range, distributed very abnormally." The male disciple took a jade slip from his waist, a flash of spiritual light at his fingertips, recording a few notes. "Senior Sister, further ahead is the boundary of our team's responsibility." Yi Ningen turned to Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou stood 2 steps behind her, not a drop of blood on his body, not even a crease on his hem. Yi Ningen's gaze stopped on him for a moment, then shifted away. "Is your spiritual power still enough?" "It's fine." Fang Zhou thought for a while. "I have no problem." Fang Zhou didn't really make a move along the way, mainly because Yi Ningen protected him too well. Occasionally a few leaked demonic beasts would be instantly killed by him, not even able to touch his hem. Looking at the miserable appearance of the other two, Fang Zhou felt a bit embarrassed. Yi Ningen's fingers subconsciously touched the disciple token at her waist, her fingertips stroking back and forth on the edge of the token. Determined in her heart, the master gave her a trump card to save her life, so there would be no problems. Probe a bit further forward, confirm the situation and then retreat. The three continued to advance forward. The forest became quieter and quieter. The birdsong disappeared at some unknown time, and even the sound of the wind seemed to be suppressed by something. The air became viscous, carrying a faint smell of fishy sweetness. Yi Ningen stopped. She didn't speak, just raised her hand. The male disciple immediately unfastened the wide sword from his back, holding it in his hand. The crimson spiritual light on the sword body lit up silently. Fang Zhou stood behind Yi Ningen, his gaze passing over her shoulders to look toward the dense forest ahead. His divine sense had long explored there. The front was indeed not quite right, but there was no danger, so he didn't open his mouth to remind. Yi Ningen spread her divine sense silently. Her divine sense crossed layer upon layer of dense forest, touching a cluster of extremely chaotic spiritual power residues 3 miles ahead. The spiritual energy ahead is very chaotic. She retracted her divine sense. Her voice pressed very low. The three lightened their footsteps and moved over, passing through a patch of low shrubs. The scene in front of them suddenly opened up, a clearing in the forest that had been forcefully flattened. Not a blade of grass grew on the ground, and the soil was an abnormal black color. Fang Zhou stepped on it, and a sticky sensation came from the soles of his shoes. Broken tree trunks were scattered at the edge of the clearing. In the very center of the clearing, dozens of demonic beast corpses were piled into a small hill. The bloody smell mixed with the smell of rotting filled the air. The strong smell made Fang Zhou feel a bit disgusted. Yi Ningen covered her mouth and nose with her sleeves. Her gaze swept back and forth on the corpse pile twice, then circled to the side, and squatted down. These demonic beasts were not killed by cultivators. The male disciple squatted beside her, using the tip of his sword to flick away the outermost demonic wolf corpse. The demonic wolf's abdomen had been torn open by a huge gash, the edges of the wound ragged, which were traces left by biting. They were killing each other. The male disciple said. Yi Ningen didn't speak. She inspected a few more corpses. Every wound was biting. Claw marks. Impact. Dozens of demonic beasts attacked each other here, until the last one also fell. Suddenly, Yi Ningen's movements paused, as if she had discovered something. She used her sword tip to flick open the forelimb of a demonic beast, revealing what was pressed underneath. A black small tripod the size of a palm, dipped upside down in the charred black mud. The tripod body was carved with dense dark red patterns, already shattered for more than half. Only the base still counted as complete. When Yi Ningen's sword tip approached, those remaining patterns flashed slightly. What is this? The male disciple reached out and pointed at the small tripod. Yi Ningen didn't reach out to touch it. She used her sword tip to flip the small tripod over. A strange symbol was carved on the bottom of the tripod, giving off an uncomfortable fluctuation. This should be a beast-gathering array of some evil cult. Yi Ningen stood up, scanned around. This is man-made. Fang Zhou raised his eyebrows. Somewhat interesting. Really is a villain. Hope it won't be too weak. After Yi Ningen confirmed several times that the small tripod was not harmful, she carefully wrapped it with some kind of cloth, put it into her storage ring, and after recording the position, the three bypassed the corpse pile and continued to explore forward. Less than 10 miles away, the second clearing, same charred black soil, same stacked demonic beast corpses, same shattered black small tripod. This time the corpse pile was larger. Judging from the size and quantity of the demonic beasts, at least 100 died here. The interval between the two array plates is 10 miles. Yi Ningen unfolded her portable map, pointing at two positions on it with her fingertips. The male disciple leaned over to take a look, his Adam's apple rolling. Further ahead, Yi Ningen folded the map, put away the small tripod. The third clearing, on the ground, it was not only piled with demonic beast corpses, but also mixed with a few corpses of rogue cultivators. The robes on their bodies were torn to shreds, their faces blurred, broken weapons scattered around them, and shattered storage bags. The male disciple walked to the side of a rogue cultivator's corpse, using his sword tip to flick away the fragments of the storage bag at his waist. The fragments were covered with dried blood, but a logo could be vaguely seen. I've seen this person. The male disciple rested his wide sword on the ground, registered at the affairs hall last month. Right in the very center of this pile of corpses, also dipped upside down, was a shattered black small tripod. Fang Zhou stood at the edge of the clearing, his gaze falling on that small tripod. Somewhat interesting. Fang Zhou appeared calm on the surface, but he had already completely understood the function of this thing. Gather demonic beasts, trap them in the array, stimulate the ferocity of the demonic beasts, force them to kill each other. It could already be confirmed that it was really man-made. Then why do this? Fang Zhou scanned around, but didn't find anything missing. So it was not to collect certain things, but to need this result itself. Fang Zhou fell into deep thought. Report to the sect. Yi Ningen stood up, put away the jade slip. 3 beast gathering points, distributed at equal intervals. Distance 10 miles. Rogue cultivators encountered death among them. Request sect elders to intervene in the investigation. Close the team. Go back and report first. Yi Ningen made a gesture, put away the small tripod in the center of the corpses. The three turned and walked toward the outside of the forest, their footsteps much faster than when they came. Fang Zhou seemed to have perceived something, suddenly turning his head, casting his gaze toward a hill 1,000 miles away. On the hill, a white-robed figure stood with his hands behind his back, also looking toward the direction of the forest clearing. His appearance was covered by some kind of magic. Unable to see the expression clearly, the two's lines of sight were across 1,000 miles of mountain forest, facing each other from afar. One breath later, the white-robed figure's figure swayed like a reflection in water, and then completely disappeared into the air, as if never having existed. Run away? Quite cautious. I thought I could fight the boss directly today. Fang Zhou turned back. Yi Ningen was looking at him, her face carrying a trace of concern. What's wrong? No, nothing. Let's go back. Fang Zhou answered dryly. Yi Ningen was somewhat puzzled, but still turned and led the way in front. When returning to Chang'an City, the sun was just sinking to the west. The dim yellow light spread on the street, dyeing the bluestone slabs into a warm golden color. Yi Ningen led Fang Zhou and walked toward the affairs hall. She didn't walk fast. Fang Zhou followed half a step behind her, watching her neatly tied long hair swaying gently in the twilight. There were people coming and going in the affairs hall. Almost all of them were Myriad Saints sect disciples. Some had just returned from outside the city, their robes still carrying the blood of demonic beasts. Yi Ningen led Fang Zhou through the crowd. Help me open a certificate. Yi Ningen placed the disciple token on the counter. This one beside me assisted us in completing the suppression task today. The deacon disciple behind the counter took the token, swiped it on the array plate, looked up at Fang Zhou, then looked at Yi Ningen. Finally, not being able to hold back, Senior Sister Yi, this is Fang Zhou. Yi Ningen tried hard to make her tone the same as usual. Out on a task with our team today. Route West Line. Participated throughout. The deacon disciple tightened his face, lowered his head and made a few notes in the booklet. Halfway through the note, the brush tip paused, and then he looked up again, his gaze scanning back and forth between Yi Ningen and Fang Zhou. Yi Ningen looked at him expressionlessly. He immediately lowered his head, the brush tip moving again, the movements much faster than usual. Task certificate is opened. The deacon disciple pushed a stamped document onto the counter, his movements extra nimble. Yi Ningen picked up the certificate, scanned it once with lowered eyes, confirming the content was correct, then turned and handed it to Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou took the certificate, lowered his head to look at it. It was about the same as the one he got when he went to accept the task himself last time. Only this time there was an extra line of notes. Certified by Yi Ningen of St. Cold Peak. The male disciple standing on the side looked at Yi Ningen, then looked at Fang Zhou, and finally opened his mouth, his tone carrying a kind of relief-like ease. Senior Sister, the task is also submitted. Then I will go back first. Today's trip left my clothes full of demonic beast blood. If I don't wash them, I will be smoked to death by myself. Yi Ningen nodded at him. The male disciple turned to Fang Zhou again, cupped his hands. Brother Fang, go out on a task together another day. Fang Zhou hadn't returned the salute yet, but he had already walked out of the gate of the affairs hall in 2 or 3 steps, his footsteps as fast as if someone were chasing him behind. Yi Ningen put the disciple token back to her waist, and walked toward the outside of the door with Fang Zhou. The disciples in the affairs hall lowered their heads one after another, pretending to look at the documents in their hands, but Fang Zhou could feel those gazes secretly drifting toward here from all directions. He turned his head and scanned. A few disciples didn't hold it back, and immediately shifted their focus. The two crossed the threshold of the affairs hall, and walked to the edge of the square. The evening wind blew from the west, carrying the smell of cooking smoke and street stalls. The spirit array in the square was still slowly rotating in midair, twilight plating a layer of golden light on it. This certificate can be exchanged for sect contributions after you join the Myriad Saints sect. Yi Ningen stopped, turned around. Martial law will be lifted inside the city tomorrow. I will come find you. Fang Zhou put the certificate into his storage ring. No problem. If you are busy, you can be busy first. I have no problem alone. I have something I want to tell you. Yi Ningen suddenly took a deep breath. Fang Zhou looked at her appearance, inexplicably feeling it was a bit funny. These days of re-meeting her, it was the first time he had seen her show this expression. Then I'll wait for you. Yi Ningen raised her eyes and looked at him. In the twilight, her expression could not be seen clearly, but Fang Zhou could feel her gaze staying on his face for a longer time than usual. After a while, she spoke. Then I will return to the sect first. She walked 2 steps, turned back to look at him once more, and then rose on her sword. The green sword light swept across the sky of more than half of Chang'an City, flying toward the direction of the Myriad Saints sect mountain gate. Fang Zhou stood at the edge of the square, watching that sword light go far away, until it completely disappeared into the depths of the twilight. He suddenly perceived something, turning his head to look at the affairs hall. Quite a few Myriad Saints sect disciples were stretching their necks and looking this way, and seeing him turn his head, those heads shrank back in unison, pretending as if nothing had happened. Are Myriad Saints sect disciples also this gossipy? Fang Zhou couldn't help but complain, turning and walking toward home. When pushing open the courtyard gate, the moon shadow cat was crouching on the windowsill, its tail hanging down from the window edge, the tip of the tail swaying one way or another, leaving a small silver arc in the twilight. Seeing Fang Zhou push the door and come in, it jumped down directly from the windowsill, its 4 claws touching the ground lightly, and pounced toward Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou reached out to catch it. That ball of fur took the opportunity to burrow into his arm bend, nudging his palm with its head. Fang Zhou reached out to rub the back of its neck. The moon shadow cat narrowed its eyes, issuing an extremely light purring sound from its throat. You are quite clingy. Fang Zhou looked down at it, suddenly remembering one thing. Have I never given you a name? The moon shadow cat opened its eyes, tilting its head in confusion. It had always thought Hajime was its name. Fang Zhou thought while pinching the cat's paw, thinking for a long while. Dozens of names passed through his mind, and finally gave up. Forget it. Just call it Xiaoya, little moon. The moon shadow cat looked at him, meowed, and accepted it. It was just a cat. It didn't matter what it was called. Fang Zhou sat down on the chair in the guest hall, leaning the chair back, the back of the chair pressing against the wall, staring at the wood grain on the ceiling in a daze for a while. Today was fairly fulfilling. Beat a few demonic beasts, suspect suspected of starting to follow the plot, and even met someone suspected of being a villain. But the first thing that popped into his mind at this moment was Yi Ningen. She said she had something she wanted to say. What could it be? Fang Zhou placed the chair legs back on the ground, issuing a soft muffled sound. Xiaoya erased its head from his embrace, sweeping his chin with its tail. What do you think she wants to tell me? Fang Zhou looked down at it. Xiaoya didn't answer, just nudging his palm with its head again, meowing softly. Outside the window, the twilight of Chang'an City was sinking inch by inch. The lights of the marketplace in the distance lit up, orange light shining through the vines on the courtyard wall, casting fragmented light spots on the bluestone slabs. Fang Zhou stared at those light spots in a daze for a while, and then stood up. Hey, you think she won't be thinking about annulling the engagement at this time, right? No, she shouldn't be that kind of person. Then why would she act like that? Wouldn't it be fine to just say it directly like when we were little? Sure enough, have we been separated for too long and become distant? Fang Zhou kept talking to himself. Sure enough, girls change 18 times in 18 years, but it seems I wasn't very familiar with her either. Fang Zhou scratched his head, beginning to rot. Be lazy. Xiaoya didn't understand its master's meaning, meowed softly, and nudged Fang Zhou with its head. Forget it. Don't want to think about it. Fang Zhou placed Xiaoya back into the cat nest, patted its head. Tomorrow, I'll know. Fang Zhou closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. Fang Zhou sat in the guest hall, not sleeping all night. For him, sleep was no longer a necessary rest. He used to sleep, just to maintain his previous habits. Fang Zhou raised his hand, a formless force circulating in his hand. Did I succeed? So, my Tao is like this? Really? Didn't expect I was this kind of person. Fang Zhou's hand suddenly tightened, and that force disappeared into thin air. Forget it. Should pick a good day to break through to the Saint Realm. When should I choose? Fang Zhou muttered to himself, suddenly turning his head to look outside. It's Yi Ningen coming. Dong, dong. Knocking sounded at the door. After a while, Yi Ningen pushed open the door, and walked in. Seeing Fang Zhou, Yi Ningen was slightly surprised, but quickly calmed down, walking to Fang Zhou's side and sitting down. Good morning. Fang Zhou spoke first, with a little bit of bad taste. Didn't bring me breakfast today? Yi Ningen was a bit annoyed. Her whole mind today was thinking about how to tell Fang Zhou about that matter. I'll go buy it for you now. Yi Ningen subconsciously stood up, wanting to escape. She really didn't have the courage to say that matter to Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou felt a bit funny looking at Yi Ningen's cute and naive appearance. He was just having a bit of bad taste, wanting to tease her. Forget it. Forget it. Just tell me directly what you are looking for me for today. He had to start trying to take the initiative. Otherwise, Yi Ningen would really become his mother. After hearing what Fang Zhou said, Yi Ningen clutched her clothes with both hands, looking like she didn't know how to open her mouth. You won't be, at this point, thinking about annulling the engagement, right? Fang Zhou looked at Yi Ningen like this and felt somewhat curious. What kind of matter is so hard to open one's mouth? No. These two words almost popped out of Yi Ningen's mouth. Fang Zhou didn't speak, just looking at her, waiting for her to continue. His hand was placed casually on the desktop, fingertips inches away from her hand. Yi Ningen lowered her eyes, looking at her fingers clutching her clothes, the knuckles turning slightly white due to force. She forced herself to open her hand, smoothing out the creases she had clutched. She opened her mouth, her voice very light. I want to return the origin of the constant yang saint body to you. Is it such a trivial matter? Fang Zhou directly opened his mouth to interrupt her. No need. Even without that constant yang saint body, I can still transcend my peers, and be invincible in the world. That constant yang saint body should feel proud to have ever had a master like me. Having said this, Fang Zhou stopped concealing his aura, actually reaching the early stage of the profound pill. I thought what matter it was, just this broken thing. Who wants it? If Yi Ningen adds the supreme yin saint body plus the constant yang saint body, she is only at the peak of the profound pill. But if she returns the constant yang saint body, then to when would she be able to see my back? Feeling the cultivation level Fang Zhou showed, Yi Ningen was greatly shocked. It took a while for Yi Ningen to come back to her senses, and she spoke more firmly. Then I should return the constant yang saint body to you even more. You can practice so fast without the constant yang saint body. If you had the constant yang saint body, you would have already surpassed me by now, right? Really no need. Don't look at how it is your cultivation level that is higher now. But if we fight, you might not necessarily be able to beat me. Fang Zhou was somewhat helpless. He really didn't want that constant yang saint body. He had researched before. So-called physiques are nothing more than the manifestation of some laws. Indeed, possessing a physique will have some advantages, but it will also be limited by the physique. You can't let a constant yang saint body perceive the supreme yin Tao, right? Physique gives you advantages in some aspects, but it will also limit you. Yi Ningen looked at Fang Zhou earnestly. That is why I want to return the constant yang saint body to you even more. Looking at Yi Ningen like this, Fang Zhou had a bit of a headache. Why is she so stubborn? Yi Ningen continued to say, I exchanged a dual cultivation method from the sect, which can transfer the constant yang saint body back to you. Fang Zhou widened his eyes. Sorry, it was me who spoke too loudly just now. Please forget what I just said. Return the constant yang saint body to me. Yi Ningen's face turned red to her ear roots at a speed visible to the naked eye, lips moving, as if wanting to say something, but in the end, said nothing, just turning her gaze to the side. Just joking. Was I fooled by me? Ha ha ha. Fang Zhou only reacted to what he had said at this moment, but the words had already been spoken, so he could only explain dryly that it was just a joke just now. But looking at Yi Ninggen's rosy pretty face, he knew she didn't believe it at all. Tired. Destroy it. Fang Zhou was in despair, wishing he could travel back and give himself a slap. Call you to talk nonsense. The guest hall was quiet for a long time. Meow. Seeming to perceive the master's embarrassment, Xiaoya came to save the situation. Fang Zhou saw Xiaoya and his eyes lit up, hurriedly beckoning it to come over. Xiaoya leaped lightly, and jumped into Yi Ninggen's embrace, rubbing against Yi Ningen and meowing softly. Well done, Hajime. Tomorrow I will personally make a magic treasure for you. Seeming to feel the encouragement of the master, Xiaoya rolled over in Yi Ningen's embrace, feet up in the air, rubbing her fingers with its head. Yi Ningen lowered her head to look at it, her fingers subconsciously scratching under its chin. Xiaoya issued a purring sound, its tail swinging leisurely. Well done. Fang Zhou saw that Yi Ningen seemed to have calmed down, took a deep breath, and changed the topic stiffly. Ningen, is yesterday's matter serious? How come you don't seem to care about yesterday's matter at all? Yi Ningen had recovered by this time, speaking softly. The sect says, it's just some clowns, no need to mind. Just consider it as them helping clear out the demonic beasts. Demonic beasts, speak for me. Rogue cultivators killed, speak for me. Fang Zhou also followed Yi Ningen's words and continued. Is the Myriad Saints sect that amazing? That goes without saying. Since its birth, the Myriad Saints sect has been the #1 sect in the world. Yi Ningen spoke of the Myriad Saints sect and felt proud involuntarily. Wait until you join the Myriad Saints sect. You will know how great the Myriad Saints sect is. Broken. This Myriad Saints sect won't be an evil cult, right? Yi Ningen looks a bit like she's been brainwashed now. But looking at the style of the Myriad Saints sect's conduct, the Myriad Saints sect should be an unquestionable righteous sect. Fang Zhou put his heart down. Is that so? Then when does the Myriad Saints sect assessment start? Yi Ningen put Xiaoya on the table, whispering, it should be next month. The elder hosting the assessment counted the day. After you finish the assessment, we can just go back and get married. At that time, we can return the constant Yang Saint body to you. Cough, cough. Is that so? Fang Zhou touched Xiaoya. Why did it return to this topic again? Fang Zhou suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Why don't we spar? If you lose, then don't always think about returning the constant Yang Saint body to me. Having said this to the end, Fang Zhou suddenly felt a bit of heartache. He was indeed a bit suppressed, but not to the point of losing his bottom line. What he wanted was pure love. For this kind of thing, did he choose to beat his wife? Hajime plus Fang Zhou. You guy. Yi Ningen looked at Fang Zhou earnestly. Sparring is fine, but you cannot use this matter as a bet. Indifferent to soft and hard, not as cute as when you were young. Yi Ningen. No need for more words. This is the winner's right. Because the school was on holiday, so there were not many people. Just perfect to borrow the martial arts arena. In the martial arts arena of Cheng'an School, Fang Zhou was looking at the array patterns around curiously, while Yi Ningen was standing opposite him. Why is there a formation of this level in the school's martial arts arena? Fang Zhou looked at the activated formation, asking Yi Ningen. Disciples within the sect occasionally have a performance match for the students of the school, to avoid causing damage. So this formation was established. Performance match? Yes. To stimulate the enthusiasm of students for practice and learning. Occasionally disciples come over. Fang Zhou nodded, looking at Yi Ningen, who had empty hands. No sword. Don't release the water. Don't go easy on me. I am very strong. Yi Ningen hesitated for a while, but still shook her head. I am not a sword cultivator. The sword is just a tool for me. At this moment, the array patterns on the ground had completely lit up, spiritual light flowing slowly along the array patterns, supporting a transparent barrier around the two. Fang Zhou looked at Yi Ningen opposite. At this moment, she was standing in place, hands naturally hanging by her sides, looking straight at him, not attacking over. Fang Zhou smiled. He had long wanted to say this sentence. Yi Ningen was startled for a moment. Then the temperature of the air plummeted. Fang Zhou's brows frowned. An ice thorn appeared out of thin air in front of his eyes, stabbing straight at him. Fang Zhou mobilized spiritual power. A red spiritual light rushed toward the ice thorn. The two collided, and the ice thorn shattered directly, fragments shooting in Yi Ningen's direction, dissipating halfway. Ordinary cultivators use spiritual power. Regardless of whether it is using techniques or directly using spiritual power attack, it will cause loss. And this red light is a change in the nature of spiritual power researched by Fang Zhou. By changing the nature of spiritual power, to make spiritual power achieve all kinds of effects, the red light Fang Zhou is using now can be perfectly transformed, outputting pure force. You look down on me? Use your full strength. Let me see your strength. Yi Ningen's spiritual power surged, the coercion of the peak profound pill spreading over the entire venue in an instant. Finally serious? Let me see how many surprises you can bring me. Yi Ningen formed a seal with both hands, and ice layers spread rapidly under her feet. Just the attached effect causes such a big influence, really makes people look forward to it. Fang Zhou was sighing in his heart, and his movements didn't stop either, just stepping on it. Red spiritual light constantly pouring out, quickly occupying half of the martial arts arena, contending with the ice layer. Yi Ningen saw that Fang Zhou could easily resist the attached effect of her techniques, slightly relieved, hesitated for a while, retracted a few points of force, stretched out a finger, and aimed the technique at Fang Fang Zhou to release it. A cold current arrived in front of Fang Zhou in an instant. This technique is somewhat interesting. Fang Zhou directly stretched out his hand. Red spiritual light pouring out, colliding with the cold current. The red spiritual light froze directly when it touched the cold current. Actually able to freeze spiritual power? Pity it's still not enough. The red light behind shattered the frozen red light in front along with the cold current. Yi Ninggen's pupils shrank. A thick ice wall rising in front of her. Useless. Fang Zhou's mouth curled up. That ice wall couldn't block even 1 second. Directly penetrated by the red light. And behind the wall, Yi Ninggen had disappeared without a trace. I said it. Useless. Fang Zhou suddenly turned around, punched out, and the fist front collided with Yi Ninggen's palm. A wave of air exploded between the two, hitting the barrier, stirring up ripples. Yi Ninggen borrowed force to retreat, her toes sliding out 2 long white marks on the ice surface. She stabilized her figure, lowered her head to look at her palm, her tiger's mouth numb, her entire arm trembling slightly. Immediately, spiritual power flowed, and her arm quickly returned to normal. How is it? I said you don't need to hold back. Show me all the capabilities of the Supreme Yin Saint body and the Constant Yang Saint body. Possessing 2 great saint bodies, your strength should be more than that. Fang Zhou didn't take the opportunity to attack, instead standing in place waiting for Yi Ninggen to restore her state. Yi Ninggen looked at Fang Zhou like this, and also revealed a smile. It turns out you want to fight with me so much? Good. Since it's like this, then let me show you my full strength. Yi Ninggen began to stimulate the power of the 2 great saint bodies. Her eyes turned one gold and one blue. The power of 2 top-level physiques perfectly integrated. As a heaven's pride, naturally, she could perfectly use the power in her body, even if they were incompatible with each other. Moon and brilliant sun visions appeared in the barrier at the same time. Cold and heat constantly flowed in the barrier. Fang Zhou's released spiritual power was directly suppressed by 40%, although he only used the spiritual power of the profound pill period. But the quality of his spiritual power was not something ordinary people could compare with. Even he was suppressed into this state. If it were someone else, one wouldn't need to fight. Just give up. Ha ha ha. Right, Yi Ninggen. It's like this. Let me be fascinated by you. Fang Zhou's emotions were completely mobilized. In the past, he had never fought with others, which caused him to have never noticed that fighting was so joyful. Yi Ninggen looked at Fang Zhou, who seemed not to have been affected, but instead his emotions were rising higher and higher. Slightly relieved, her eyes set, and her figure disappeared instantly. Fang Zhou's pupils shrank, stepping out 1 step, also disappearing in the original spot. Fang Zhou just disappeared, and Yi Ninggen appeared not far from where he disappeared. A palm struck out, and the yin and yang flowing spiritual power directly shattered the ground protected by the formation. Traceless, perfected so quickly. Sure enough, I still have to return the constant yang saint body to you. Hey, what are you thinking? You can't be distracted in battle. Fang Zhou suddenly appeared in front of Yi Ninggen, and a red beam of light shot directly at her. Yi Ninggen's spiritual power flowed at the extreme speed, forming a light film of yin and yang flow on her body surface. But once illuminated by that red light, the light film only resisted for an instant, and then was penetrated. What? Yi Ninggen didn't have time to think too much and was hit by the red light, flying backward. Fortunately, the light film removed the force. Otherwise, just that blow would have been enough to penetrate her defense. Yi Ninggen forcibly twisted her figure in the air, stepping on the ground continuously for several steps, barely standing still. Sure enough, can't penetrate your defense? Forget it. Forget it. Not fighting. You are still letting me win. Boring. Fang Zhou calmed his spiritual power, looking at Yi Ninggen's unscathed appearance, somewhat speechless. Retract the previous statement. In the low realm, having a powerful physique indeed has relatively high strength. Can use the rules of the Dharma aspect in the low realm. The saint body is still too yin. Are you admitting defeat? Yi Ninggen retracted her spiritual power. The vision faded, her eyes turning back to black. Ha, keep fighting. Probably will have to go all out. I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself and hurt you then. Fang Zhou sighed. Clearly he was the stronger one, but Yi Ninggen couldn't see it. He didn't even use many techniques, mainly because fighting on wouldn't be interesting either. Yi Ninggen was unwilling to go all out, and after activating her physique, she only wanted to fight hand to hand. Continuing to fight would only become more and more boring. Then you have given up preventing me from returning the constant yang saint body to you? Yi Ninggen tilted her head, seeming a bit surprised. No, Ninggen, do you want to dual cultivate with me that much? Fang Zhou had no moves left. He now suspected that Yi Ninggen was not simply wanting to return the constant yang saint body to him, but wanted to dual cultivate with him. Thinking about it this way, my charm is still quite high. Yi Ninggen's face suddenly flushed red. The red face made Fang Zhou think of an apple, wanting to take a bite. I just wanted to return your things to you. Fang Zhou looked at her shy appearance, sighing involuntarily. No need. Look, even without the constant yang saint body, I can fight you to this extent. In a few more days, I'm afraid I'll surpass you. Surpassing in every sense. Yi Ninggen cast a technique, and the array patterns around the martial arts arena dimmed one by one. The transparent barrier transformed into fragmented light spots and dissipated in the air. She retracted her hand, restoring to her usual cold appearance, as if that intense spar just now had never happened. I just wanted to return your things to you. Yi Ninggen's voice returned to its usual coldness, but Fang Zhou vaguely heard a trace of grievance. patience. Why is this girl so stubborn? Fang Zhou sighed. He felt he sighed more today than he had in this whole life. Of course, can't compare to the previous life. Previous life still had to work. Fang Zhou looked at Yiningen earnestly. Through the spar just now, you should have felt it too, right? Even without that constant yang saint body. I am also the most brilliant scorching sun in this world. Yiningen did not give in, moving 2 steps forward to get close to Fang Zhou. That's why you need even more to take back the constant yang saint body. The two were tit for tat, not giving in at all, faces almost sticking together. Fang Zhou could feel the breath from her breathing, carrying some sweetness, flickering on his face. Those eyes, always cold as ice and frost, were close at hand. He only now discovered that her eyelashes were very long, currently trembling gently. After a while, Fang Zhou discovered they seemed to be leaning too close, hurriedly retreating, while Yiningen, although with a flushed pretty face, didn't retreat one step. Seeing Fang Zhou retreat, the corners of her mouth rose slightly, her chin raised slightly. Fang Zhou couldn't take it anymore. Is she a child? This is. Fang Zhou raised both hands like a Frenchman, speaking helplessly. Alright, you win. I am afraid of you. We'll discuss this matter later. Maybe in the future, you won't be so obsessed with wanting to return the constant yang saint body to me. Impossible. I will not give up. Yiningen snorted lightly with a trace of coquettishness. Fang Zhou looked at her coquettish appearance, heart moving involuntarily. How cute. No, what am I thinking? Fang Zhou looked at Yiningen's appearance, feeling closer, as if returning to the days of childhood spent together, although they hadn't seen each other for a dozen years. But now that they were together, Fang Zhou couldn't say hard-mouthed that he wasn't familiar with Yiningen anymore. Fine, won't talk to you anymore. Fang Zhou beckoned to Yiningen, turning to walk outside the martial arts arena. Go eat first. The sun was completely suspended above the sky, the sunlight passing through the branches and leaves of those old trees by the side of the martial arts arena, shattering into pieces of golden light spots falling on his shoulders and the top of his hair. He didn't walk fast, his robe slightly raised by the wind, his side face clearly outlined in the light and shadow. Looking at Fang Zhou's appearance of being bathed in sunlight, Yiningen's heart skipped a beat involuntarily. She followed quickly, walking half a step behind him. The sunlight stretched his shadow, just happening to fall at her feet. She lowered her head, quietly stepping on the edge of that shadow to walk. Fang Zhou tilted his head and glanced at her. What do you want to eat at noon? Anything. There is no restaurant named anything. 10,000 miles away, sunlight illuminated the undulating green mountain range, the peak steep and towering, yet still possessing life, resiliently radiating vitality. Deep in the depths of some inconspicuous mountain peak, a pitch-black cave entrance was embedded between the rock walls. Sunlight falling to the edge of the cave entrance was swallowed silently. Deep in the cave entrance was a bright stone room, several fist-sized night pearls embedded in the walls, illuminating the entire stone room. In the stone room, a gray-robed cultivator was bowing and reporting to a figure in white robes. Bishop, until today, hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts have already died in the vicinity of Cheng'an City. Within 1,000 miles of Cheng'an, there are no demonic beasts left. On the high platform at the end of the stone room, a figure wearing white robes sat on a stone chair, that person's face hidden in the shadow of the hood, one hand casually placed on the armrest, fingers long and slender, knuckles distinct, and dark silver ring on the index finger, a twisted symbol carved on the ring. Hundreds of thousands? The white-robed cultivator's voice was very light, yet produced a low resonance in this enclosed stone room. What about those beast-gathering arrays? Most have been discovered by the Myriad Saints sect disciples. The gray-robed cultivator hung his head. The Myriad Saints sect doesn't care about this at all. The reaction is lukewarm. The white-robed cultivator smiled lightly. They will not care what conspiracies the ants at their feet have, as long as we act carefully, and don't touch their bottom line. It will be fine. The gray-robed cultivator hesitated for a moment, raised his head, looking at the white-robed cultivator on the high platform, opening his mouth hesitatingly. Bishop, this subordinate has one thing unclear. Speak. In this operation, we spent several months arranging the beast-gathering arrays, consumed a lot of resources. In the end, it was just letting hundreds of thousands of low-level demonic beasts kill each other. Is the effect of this matter a bit of a loss of more than gain? The white-robed cultivator's fingers on the armrest tapped lightly, an extremely light tapping sound echoing in the stone room. The gray-robed cultivator immediately lowered his head, not daring to say another word. Loss of more than gain. The white-robed cultivator played with the word, as if weighing its weight. You think we lost what? Some shoddy beast-gathering tripods, some low-level demonic beasts. These things piled together are not worth my taking a second look at. He slowly stood up, the white robe sliding off the stone chair, dragging out a long shadow on the ground. Demonic beasts were never our goal. Their deaths are the things that the god needs. The gray-robed cultivator raised his head, confusion appearing in his eyes. The white-robed cultivator paced to the wall on one side of the stone room, raised his hand and waved, and the spirit array embedded on the wall lit up, a huge map appearing out of thin air. It was mountains and rivers condensed by spiritual power. Densely packed markings spread all over it. Among them, the position of Cheng'an City was circled by a dark red circle. The white-robed cultivator turned around, in the shadow of the hood, his mouth corners slowly bending into an arc, revealing a fanatical smile. He opened his hands violently, his wide white-robed sleeves sliding down, exposing two pale pale arms. In the sealed stone room, his voice suddenly rose, carrying a kind of tremor that could finally be released after being suppressed for a long time. Do you know the God we believe in possesses what kind of great power? His voice bumped repeatedly against the stone walls, echoing layer by layer. Even if body dies, even if soul shatters, even if dismembered into 10,000 pieces, fragments scattered between heaven and earth, as long as there is still slaughter in this world, he will surely return from the endless slaughter. His hands slowly lowered, his 10 fingers interlaced in front of his chest, as if holding an invisible holy object. The stone room was quiet again, only the spirit array map on the wall still flickering silently. Those dark red circles, like dozens of opened eyes, quietly watching the name of the city in the center of the map. The gray-robed cultivator at this time also lowered his head, praying in a low voice. God, your believers are willing to offer everything, praying for you to return to the human world, and wash away the muddiness of this world. The white-robed cultivator looked at the gray-robed cultivator with a complex gaze. God, please save your believers. Fang Zhou and the two walked back along the main street of Chang'an City. The sunlight spilled straight down from the top of his head, pressing their shadows into a small lump. The noodle shop by the roadside drifted out steaming fragrance. Fang Zhou's eyes lit up, entering the noodle shop, casually picking an empty table and sitting down. Yi Ningen sat down opposite him, her gaze sweeping across the desktop, then landing on Fang Zhou's face again. What do you want to eat? Fang Zhou looked at the menu on the wall, asking Yi Ningen. Just the same as you. Then 2 bowls of beef noodles. Fang Zhou held up 2 fingers to the shopkeeper. The noodle shop was not big, and there weren't many people at this hour. The shopkeeper responded and then turned to busy himself at the stove. Before long, 2 big steaming bowls were placed on the table. The noodle soup was shimmering with amber oily light, the beef cut with uniform thickness, sprinkled with a handful of bright green chopped green onions, the fragrance drilling straight into their noses. Fang Zhou took a look at the beef in the bowl, suddenly remembering that famous scene from his previous life. I don't eat beef. Yi Ningen looked at Fang Zhou in confusion, not understanding what he meant. Just joking. Fang Zhou took the chopsticks off the bowl, lowered his head and picked up a large piece of beef, stuffing it into his mouth. As a transmigrator, he often felt lonely in this world. No one could understand his memes, and no one could let him thoroughly open his heart. Silence spread between the two. The two finished this meal in silence, paid the bill, and walked out of the noodle shop. Fang Zhou and Yi Ningen looked at each other on the street, not knowing what to do, completely failing to adapt to the other's existence. Do you have anything to do this afternoon? Fang Zhou broke the silence. No, Yi Ningen said. There are no arrangements from the sect side these few days. Oh, then what do you usually do in the sect? Fang Zhou took the lead and walked toward the direction of the small building. Yi Ningen followed half a step behind him. Usually in the sect, Yi Ningen thought for a while. Practice. Handle affairs in the peak. Occasionally go to practice some techniques. Sounds very busy. It's alright. Used to it. Fang Zhou pushed open the courtyard gate of the small building. Xiaoya was lying on the windowsill basking in the sun. Hearing the movement, it just lifted its eyelids, its tail swaying lazily, counting as a greeting. He sat down on the chair in the guest hall. Yi Ningen also walked in, sitting down at the table. Between the two was a table, and a short silence. Xiaoya suddenly jumped down from the windowsill, strolled to the side of Yi Ningen's feet, looked up at her, then leaped into her lap, curling itself into a ball of fur. It quite likes you, Fang Zhou said. You raised it very well. Yi Ningen looked down at the cat in her lap, her fingers gently scratching behind its ears. Xiaoya issued a purring sound, narrowed its eyes, and nudged further into her palm. Have you given it a name? Yi Ningen touched Xiaoya, her voice also becoming gentle. Fang Zhou leaned against the back of the chair, looking at Yi Ningen's side face as she looked down and teased the cat. Her fingers were long and slender, her nails trimmed very neatly, gently scratching under Xiaoya's chin, her movements gentle. I'm not very good at giving names, so I just called it Xiaoya directly. Xiaoya. Yi Ningen repeated this name, her fingers stopping behind Xiaoya's ears for a moment. Very pleasant to hear. Xiaoya heard someone calling its name, rolled over to expose its belly, and meowed softly. Fang Zhou looked at Yi Ningen, suddenly feeling not so lonely anymore. Ningen, what is it like inside the Myriad Saints sect? Fang Zhou suddenly opened his mouth. He was very curious, whether it was the disciples under the sect, or the management system. The Myriad Saints sect was different from the sect he imagined. Sect? Yi Ningen pondered for a while. Everyone in the sect is a good person. The attitude toward anyone is the same, and they often teach us that cultivators are no different from mortals. Overall, nothing special. No, do you know what you are saying? A cultivation sect, actually able to cast aside cultivation level, and shout everyone is equal? Is this right? This shouldn't be right, right? He pulled the chair forward. A normal sect shouldn't it be the strong are respected? Whoever has the bigger fist decides? Outer sect disciples must bow to inner sect disciples. Servant disciples can't even enter the gate of the main hall. Storybooks are all written like this. Yi Ningen tilted her head slightly, the expression as if saying what kind of things you usually watch. The Myriad Saints sect doesn't have that many classes, and the strong are generally practicing, having no time to manage sect affairs. Then the sect's rules? Fang Zhou asked. Always have rules, right? How to punish if something happens? Yi Ningen thought for a while. The sect doesn't have that many rules, as long as it doesn't affect others. Generally, there will be no punishment. Fang Zhou leaned leaned against the back of the chair, taking a few breaths to digest this information. Then what if the rules are really broken? Depends on the plot. Damage to property goes to the affairs hall to be fined spirit stones and compensation. Heavy goes to the precept peak to be punished in solitary confinement. Heavier ones then touched the bottom line of the myriad saints sect. What awaits him is only death. Feng Zhou didn't know what to say this time for real. My goodness, the ideal sect in my mind. But he still opened his mouth to ask. Then what if there is a conflict between disciples? It couldn't be that everyone loves each other, right? Conflict is normal. Yi Ningen changed Xiaoye's position, letting it lie in her arm bend. The sect has established a Dao discussion platform. Those who are not convinced go up and fight, regardless of who wins or loses after fighting. After fighting, grievances will be eliminated. If it still can't solve the problem, can also seek sect mediation. The sect has only one requirement: cannot kill each other within the same sect. Then what if you really can't stand the other party? Yi Ningen thought for a while. There is a senior brother, who couldn't stand another senior brother. Every time they met, they had to go to the Dao discussion platform to have a fight. Fought for 3 years. Now the sect has built a separate Dao discussion platform for them, locked them inside, and can only be released after fighting enough. Feng Zhou laughed. This sect is truly interesting. Yi Ningen grew up in such an environment from childhood. No wonder she was so upright. Then is the sect recruitment very strict? Feng Zhou asked. Yi Ningen thought carefully, finally shook her head. I don't understand either. The sect recruiting disciples doesn't look at talent cultivation, nor does it look at age, only looks at mind, morality, and the heart toward the Dao. Why? Teacher says the existence of the sect is just to provide a place for people of the same path to communicate and grow. People of the same path, huh? What kind of Dao is it? Feng Zhou felt very curious about this, but seeing Yi Ningen was also half understanding, didn't pursue the questioning anymore. Speaking of this, Feng Zhou pillowed his arms behind his head. School teaches people literacy and arithmetic, teaches people the principles of being a person. The affairs hall lets outside cultivators also accept tasks to accumulate certificates. Mortals and cultivators in the city eat the same rice, and receive the same punishment if they break the law. The myriad saints sect, exactly what do they want to do? Yi Ningen raised her head, looking at him. Teacher says, cultivators and mortals are both humans. Since they are humans, they should have a human way of living. She paused. The myriad saints sect doesn't have any particularly far-reaching goals, just wants to make the world have less bullying of the weak by the strong, and have more justice. Feng Zhou was silent for a long time. Outside the window came the shouting of peddlers on the street and the laughter of children chasing. Sunlight shone in obliquely from the window, falling on Yi Ningen's side face, her eyelashes trembling slightly in the light. Xiaoye rolled over in her arms, feet up in the air, exposing its belly, its tail swinging leisurely. Is it like this? Ideal, huh? I must join this sect. Feng Zhou made up his mind. Yi Ningen stayed until it was dark before leaving. Feng Zhou originally wanted to leave her to stay overnight, but Yi Ningen didn't listen to his plea to stay, left him some spirit pills helpful for profound pill cultivation, turned around, opened the door, and ran away. What's this? Making me feel like some kind of flood monster. Feng Zhou shook his head, closed the door. Xiaoye, am I going to school tomorrow? Can you go for me? Feng Zhou held up Xiaoye, asking it. Miao Wu. Forget it. I didn't count on you anyway. Should I skip class? Even if it's 1 day on, 2 days off. I don't want to go to school. Feng Zhou heaved a long sigh. Sure enough, he had a big shadow over going to school. Feng Zhou placed Xiaoye back on the table, suddenly remembering one thing. It seems I have to refine a magic treasure for you. Miao Wu. Xiaoye looked at Feng Zhou in confusion.